Look, that is a very necessary heads up because Rinpack could be coming out here flying from the hip. Want to make sure that give everybody fair warning. Yeah, try to move to the earpiece here, but oh, gee. Welcome in as we have a busy Saturday evening here on the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. So we appreciate you all hanging with us already. The chat is populated, ready to go salivating because they know what, if you are now new to the show right here, you now know, which is Rinpack is in the house. So we have a lot to talk about here across this slate. We have action going on in about 10 minutes, but we'll focus on the main slate. Of course, Mike Awesemo is producing. Hit the thumbs up button if you haven't already. What are you doing? And make sure you're subscribed here across the board. Man, we missed you last week, but it's always good to see you, of course.
Yeah, I made up for it coming on during the week with Lofty and Eric. But here we are doing another Saturday special edition of the Deeper Dive. I'm tempted to hear those your three-pointer picks throughout the show, but more importantly, to talk about some DFS action. We got some pending news as usual, but a small little slate compared to earlier in the week. But excited to break down the slate for the audience.
Look, man, you know I came prepared. That's all I'll say here. We'll sprinkle throughout as we normally do, bounce around on the Deeper Dive game by game. But you know that I'm coming with, depending on the game, I already have them locked in here. So, you know, I've got a little sprinkle on most action here from three. But yeah, with the slate itself here, you mentioned a couple of maybe smaller pieces that are pending versus what we already know. How are you approaching it just overall? You know, we have this 5-game slate that we're looking at. We'll start with that Wizards game in a minute, but just looking at it from an overall standpoint, was there anything that kind of jumped out for maybe a strategy point of view that you looked at how you could attack tonight?
In terms of the strategy point of view, I mean, we still are waiting on the news with LeBron James. I believe we got some news that LeBron James has been just upgraded to now questionable. And that's going to be really important news because Anthony Davis has been balling out over the last a week or so without LeBron James. Now, if LeBron comes back and plays, that's not going to make AD and Russ look as appealing as they once were. So that's going to be a key point of the news. And then at night, there's De'Aaron Fox yet again questionable. So it's the news yet again in the late night that's going to shape up the slate. But outside of that, the news is going to be the key component of the strategy, as it is most nights in NBA DFS.
Yeah, especially when we're taking advantage of any type of edge that can pop here on a shorter slate. So as we go, and maybe it's later in Live Before Lock, but anything that we need and get from just late injury news, you know that we're going to pop up here. Chat's always busy and active on that as well. All right, so let's jump in here, and as we'll do, we'll bounce around. We'll start with the Suns Wizards, and decent total to at least start at 222.5. It's moved up and down a little bit, but you know, in that range per se. An Odd Shopper, of course, we always remind you, is the free and easy place to go place a bet through whatever portal we have for the best return any state. Couple of minor things that really Bradley Beal would be the easiest place to start here, but let's look at the Suns first and talk about as far as how you're approaching Phoenix, knowing, of course, the return of Ayton and just them getting a little bit healthier outside of Payne, of course, and Shamet still out.
Yeah, so obviously DeAndre Ayton returning. That made me less interested in guys like Booker and Paul earlier in the week. Well, Chris Paul didn't give a damn. He still balled out and paid off that price tag. These guys are expensive, I think, for 9.4 and 9.8 with DeAndre Ayton back in the mix there. They were amazing when Ayton was gone. And obviously, we've seen the minutes go to guys like Chris Paul and Booker. A little bit uptick in their minutes with no campaign, as Monty Williams really doesn't trust Alf Payton to really roll things out there. It's tough for me to go there at these price tags, but they do have GPP winning upside. And especially on DK, I just think it's worth waiting for that LeBron news to potentially give you a chance to roster Russ and AD a little bit lower ownership as once perceived. So I'm okay if you land on them in some of your lineups, but they're not a priority by any means. Their price tag is elevated. 9.498 is you're going to need a lot in return for them. Even on FanDuel, $9,900 and $9,000. I prefer Booker. I think Booker is fine to go at 9K on FanDuel, but I think to look elsewhere outside of Chris Paul over there, they're just priced a little too much. So I have no issues if you want to go under the field on those type of guys, especially the first game of the night.
Speaking of, under, maybe even over, depending on how we're looking at this, and I'll just tag on where we were with FanDuel here, but Eytan and Bridges are single digit, but at least higher single digit ownership on FanDuel, and then a different number clearly from salary standpoint, but on DraftKings, I don't know if that makes any real difference there. I mean, we're talking about 11.4, so a little bump on Ayton's ownership on DK projected, and then Bridges dips a little bit, but Crowder at least is in there at 7.3. So you kind of have those three guys, if you will, if you wanted to go any deeper than just the two on the surface with Paul and Booker.
Yeah, and I think if there's a guy who I'd be willing to get my ownership above the field on, it'd be DeAndre Ayton. I know he's getting his conditioning back, coming back from a lower body injury, and they've been probably a little cautious with his minutes, but it's a Washington matchup in the front court where DeAndre Ayton should eat. And he turns out to be a pretty good center play on, for me, center play on DraftKings. I have no issues if you want to fall a little bit above the field with that type of ownership. Ayton does have it in his bag to put up 50 fantasy points, and a Washington matchup definitely makes the path a little bit easier for Ayton to do so.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would say Crowder because I have a nice little sprinkle. We'll get to him, though. But what about Bridges and Crowder? I know of the three, you mentioned that, but both picking up at least high single-digit ownership, enough to at least discuss here. But is this just a continued fade for the most part, or at least underweight, even to that single-digit ownership we have projected for FanDuel and DraftKings?
Yeah, so these Phoenix Suns guys on kind of across the board, a little less so on Yahoo. They're kind of priced in the sense as if Bridges and Crowder, Ayton and Crowder are still missing. And that's just not the case. These guys are back playing a significant amount of minutes. The minutes are going to go down, and the production has gone down with it as well. And you just need very outlier outcomes for these guys to pay off their ceiling price tag, which really hasn't happened when all of these guys are there. So you're just going to be buying at their highest price points, and it doesn't make sense to do so. I'd rather look to buy low on this team, and I think buying low on Ayton makes the most sense. You're just going to be buying high across the board. I mean, Jay Crowder, where you get the roster a couple of these guys, a small forward, power forward, you follow on him on FanDuel, that's fine. But he's just such a low upside guy on this Phoenix team at times. And it's just like, I think there are better options than him that we'll touch on later in the later games.
All right, so we'll keep it moving here. Appreciate the super chat there from Ryan Nelson 02. Now, do you have any futures ticket on Michigan, or is that just your squad right there, right?
And that's my squad, but
okay.
They've been struggling. I believe there were 9.5-point dogs against Purdue. They lost a close one.
Yeah, they didn't. They covered, right? Because I had Purdue. I laid the 9.5. Thanks, Ross. Right?
No, but I think
I covered at least.
Yeah, I mean, this Michigan team is talented. They lost a lot of time due to COVID.
Sure.
And they just need to get hot at the right time. Maybe it's one of those, they get the ticket to if they win the Big Ten tournament type of situation. I think they can make noise once in the tournament. They have really good talent. It's just that the chemistry isn't there this year. They were a great team last year, but this year, man, there was a lot of promise and talent. I hope they can turn things around as a Michigan fan. I'd love them to make a run in the tournament if they get a chance to even get there. That's my concern.
Look, that's a tough team too, by the way. And I know there's no such thing as a moral victory, but maybe that's a spark right there to get something going where you can feed it off. It's not easy to go in there and at least compete by any means. All right. I was just curious, maybe you doubled down with your fandom and had some like plus 5,000 ticket.
Michigan heading into the season, I think was the third most favorite team.
Yeah. I didn't know if you caught them on a downswing.
Yeah.
But right. Yeah. Coming into the year. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll definitely have to see how that pans out. And a lot of Go Blues in the chat. So Go Blue right back to all those guys who are saying so. And some Go Spartans in there. I don't want to see any of that. Let's get that out of there.
No. Look, I won't bring up the college team on this side because it shares the same conference as your squad. This is all about Michigan here, right? We want the good Rin-Pack vibes to continue tonight into winning some money here. All right, on the way out, because we'll switch to the Beal-less Wizards, right, coming up. But Jay Crowder has volume. If you look at what we've seen over the last couple of games, you had that one little blip there that pops up. That's the outlier of the 1-3, but 6, 5, that 1, 6, 6, even 4 before that. That's enough to knock down 3. Like I can get 3 of 6, 3 of 5. Ideally, I'd like 6, 7 attempts, but I'm taking a little bit of a risk, right? I'm not locking it up for you by any means, but Jay Crowder plus 250. I put half a unit, on that. Again, the return I thought was worth enough. Checked it out there on Penny as well and made sense on the book at the very least. So took a little bit of a leap there at 3+, but I think he has the volume to get there at plus 250.
Yeah, so I think at plus 250, Jay Crowder is one of those type of guys who can definitely light it on fire. Let's see what our team hasn't projected for in terms of three-pointers.
It's probably not going to be that.
It's definitely not going to be that, but
No.
if you're going to get a plus 250, I mean, you've definitely ran really good on these shows, but you've definitely figured out a nice little niche area there.
We're trying, brother. We're trying. I got a couple more. Don't get me wrong, but we're trying. Basically, we're targeting volume, and it's a long play, right? So last game out, Simons and McCollum, right, fresh off.
And what was the line you put it?
Plus 250.
At how many threes?
3.
Yeah, we haven't projected at 1.9, so you just need to run a little hot with Jay Crowder. Yeah.
Absolutely. One more based off volume. And that's really what we're targeting, where it's like, do you have enough volume to account for missing a couple, but still shooting like 35 to 40% and hitting that number? All right, let's look at the Wizards and just start with what we know as far as Beal and that situation and how that's impacting you. If it's Dinwiddie or anybody else you want to start to attack.
Yeah, so the Washington side of things is always going to be pretty interesting. And with the situation there, I mean, it's been the Dinwiddie and Kyle Kuzma show with no Bradley Beal. And it's a Phoenix matchup where things get difficult on the other side of things, but I have no issues if you want to go there. I am a little cautious of this matchup. So with no Beal and Dinwiddie and Kuzma definitely stand out as a raw points guy, but their price tags have been elevated to do so. If there is a Wizard that I am rostering, if you're trying to debate between Kuzma and Dinwiddie, I think I go to Kuzma. Especially, I think the upside is much greater, and I think the field thinks the same way as well. Priced up at $8,300 on FanDuel, I think Dinwiddie has to be your choice at 61. It's a tough Phoenix matchup that scares me a little bit, but I have no issues if you land on one of those guys. And everyone else, it's a little difficult to go there in confidence. The center roulette is back and forth. Actually, no, it's not. It is back and forth with Thomas Bryant returning today. So the front court is a little tough to predict what's going to happen there. Can KCP, Denny Abdia, Rui Hachimura have that spike upside game and kind of pay off a little cheap price tag value? Sure, but it's such a long shot tournament play. If you land on some of them in your mass MME builds, it's okay. But I have no issues if you're building one lineup to really land on any of those cheaper Wizard guys.
Yeah, so looking at KCP, because he's definitely going to be the pay down option, right? 3,700 DK, 9.9%. So clearly on a 5-game slate, it's not going to be the end all by any means, top indicator, but it might provide some leverage here as a pay down option across the slate because he's not as popular by any means.
Yeah, it's a fine pay down option. We've seen KCP had that spike volume game now in a Phoenix spot. He just needs to run extremely hot, which he certainly can. And you'd like him to have an abnormal usage game. And at 3,700, if you fall on him as like your last guy, if you're looking for a cheap guy, I wouldn't fault you. I do think there are some better guys that we can touch on later at night, potentially in that Lakers game. If there's no LeBron, we'll get to them, but it just seems a little too risky and a little too cute. And then there's a bunch of guys in OKC who just seem more solid value plays, and it's just a much better matchup that we'll touch on.
All right, awesome. So anybody, look, from the Dinwiddie, Kuzma, if you wanted to look at that, you mentioned KCP. So if there's anybody else on Washington we can hit, or we can just keep it moving by all means.
No real priority here. I think we can definitely keep moving.
All right. I did mention, though, real quick, and look, you want a long shot. I told you I'm going to come with grounded, reasonable plus EV plays, Rayen Patnaik, and I'm also going to come with some crazy shit. All right. It's just part of the gig.
You gotta get a little crazy, especially with these long shot tournament odds.
Right.
I was bored in the car ride home. I laid down a massive single game parlay for that Lakers game, only for LeBron to be upgraded to questionable. So that's probably a waste now.
Look, can you cash out for the same money? Maybe you could put the ripcord real quick. All right. You wonder why I was pushing you on KCP, right? I have Caldwell Pope 3+ threes, Washington to win the game plus 1060. Outlandish, as Rasa would say, witchcraft that I normally provide here on the Odd Shopper betting show. But I figured I'm going to come with a couple of grounded, reasonable ones. Why not hit you with a curveball here, or maybe even a knuckle in this case?
Yeah, that's definitely a knuckleball. It'd be hard for me to see Washington win this game. But the KCP one, I don't mind too much. KCP has shown the ability to take more threes from the outside, and he just needs to make one more than we haven't projected for. So it can definitely happen in those in the standard deviation of outcomes for a guy like KCP. So I like the KCP 3, but I'm not so sure if I'm a fan of the Washington.
Parlay?
Yeah, the Washington winning.
Dinwiddie was plus 4K on DK, by the way, for another triple double. So I don't know if you were looking at that type of wide ranged level of performance. I passed, but again, it was definitely something to look at based off of not having Beal out there and just the usage we saw.
Yeah, that's a little too far fetched for me. Dinwiddie to get a triple double in this type of matchup, I think.
All right, so let's keep it moving here, and we'll go to the Heat at Charlotte. Look, reminder, hit the thumbs up, please, if you haven't already, and make sure you're subscribed here as well. And talk about Odd Shopper. We talk about the Odd Shopper channel on top of that, so we want you subscribed to everything that we have going on here. And speaking of these 3-point plus plays and beyond, if you're new to New York, make sure you take advantage of what we have on this YouTube chat below. You can bet $10 and win $200 if any team scores a touchdown in the big game. Free NBA jersey. You bet $100 with Caesars. So, we've been telling you all about this. If you're new to New York, click on those links. It's a gigantic money grab right now in that state. It's already eclipsed Jersey in the same amount of time. So just anticipate more of these values. We want to bring them to you here. All right, let's look at the Heat. And we can start, of course, with, at least where we have most projected ownership. Hero is popping up right there for Miami, at least at the top. So with Butler's situation back in, Bam as well. But these are like low end percentages here. Butler is also at 15%. So we're looking at a couple of guys on the Heat in that same range of like 15 to 10% ownership.
Yeah, and in this game, I have a lot more interest in, like, anytime Charlotte's on the board, I like looking at that matchup to see who's involved. If there's a team that's shorthanded, and if the game's just going to zoom a lot, Charlotte just plays at very up-tempo pace, and a lot of times the Vegas total implicates that. And Miami on the other side, I mean, look, this total comes in at 227.5. It's, I believe, the second highest on the slate, and those are nice to look at and keep those looking at those with some sort of perspective. But looking at the DraftKings side of things, I have no issues if you follow on multiple Heat players on your roster, even with Kyle Lowry returning, just because these guys have the upside to really take you home tonight. Guys like Jimmy Butler and Bam, I think their matchup's exceptional. Kyle Lowry at 7K, he's just become a facilitator. He knows his role. He's not going to be taking a lot of shots there. So I have no issues if you play Lowry. I would rather save the 800 and go to a guy like Tyler Hero. The guy's just shooting when he's on the court. There's not much else what he's doing. He's just making sure the ball gets in the bucket. So Tyler Hero, I prefer over Lowry. The savings is definitely there on DraftKings. FanDuel, a little bit of a different story. Pretty solid value with Lowry.
Yeah.
No issues if you fall on Lowry and multiple guys from this team. And I like the Jimmy Butler play as well. I just think the upside is there for him to perform pretty well in a Charlotte matchup. The Miami team kind of like on FanDuel look very appealing. And then just the four main guys, Lowry, Hero, Bam, and Butler. If you fall on any one of those four, no issues. And if you get above the field on any of those four, I have no problem on FanDuel. Outside of that, I have no real interest in targeting any other Miami Heat player. Duncan Robinson, the only other guy, he himself says he plays a lot better when Bam Adebayo's on the court. We get the 3-point bonus on DK. He's 3,700. That's the only guy I think you can sprinkle in a little bit. You're just looking for the guy to get hot from the outside from three, and which he certainly can. He's shown that throughout the career and his season. He just is a lot more comfortable on the court when Bam's on there. And he has said this in public, actually, on his own podcast.
So on Yahoo, I'm just looking at that here, and Bam is catching some ownership as another pivot alongside Nurkic, really here in that $30 range. We'll talk about AD, especially with LeBron in the background coming up. But any interest there? Does that change anything as far as, moving to Yahoo for Bam or really anybody else on the Heat? Because Butler, even at 44, is still low enough to where you can get ahead of him and have some pretty good leverage, I would think, to the field. decent, maybe.
Yeah, and I do think some of these guys are pretty decent leverage options, and especially Yahoo. Bam getting that ownership, center only there, so it's a little bit of a different game, and the opportunity cost at center is not too high. He might be the guy that we're missing out on it, who has center eligibility on Yahoo. AD also is there, but keep an eye on that situation as Bam is pretty solid on Yahoo, so no issues falling on him.
All right, so you mentioned Duncan Robinson, but that was pretty much it. Sounded like we were scraping at that point at the bottom for the Heat, right?
Yeah, only on DK where you get a 3-point bonus. Yeah. FanDuel, he's 5K. That's way too expensive for Duncan Robinson in this offense right now with everyone back.
Fair enough, my friend. All right, so we'll move on to the other side here and look at and again, this total similar, a little higher than what we saw in that earlier game. So even with the Heat on the road, it looks like it's leaning towards, a little bit higher scoring game with Charlotte. So how are we taking advantage with that? And look, I won't bury the lead here. When you're done breaking down the DFS slate, we cannot ignore Terry Rozier taking 3-point shots at a clip that's just insane. So we'll come back to him at some point, I'm sure, from a betting standpoint.
Okay. On the DFS side of things, the Charlotte side with Gordon Hayward returning is just not as appealing. They're garnering some ownership as well. And with Gordon Hayward coming back into the mix, these guys are all just very meh. They're much more priced favorably on FanDuel than they are on DK. So I have no issues kind of like coming in on guys on the Charlotte side of things. So with Kyle Lowry returning and Bam Adebayo returning, their overall defense in Miami is going to improve. And probably they've missed so much time together. So the overall quote unquote defensive rating metrics haven't been put in play yet with all these guys back. So with so many times Jimmy Butler has been gone, they're a really good defensive team. And I think Charlotte's coming in a little bit over-owned for my liking, but don't get me wrong, guys like LaMelo Ball, Rozier have the upside to win you tournaments. But I think in terms of value, it has to be Gordon Hayward, sub 6K on both sites, 5,600 and 5,900 on FanDuel and DraftKings respectively. There's a Charlotte player I'm rostering. It's going to be Gordon Hayward at that depressed price tag.
So anybody else, is it just a matter of you're not getting a break on the salary, or you're concerned more about Hayward just taking away usage or volume?
It's a little bit of both. They're priced a little more expensive. We saw a lot of these guys in about $500-600 cheaper for some time. And then without Gordon Hayward, they elevated in price tag. Now Gordon Hayward has returned and we've gotten the Gordon Hayward price tag discount. Plus, I think the other side of things, it's not the best matchup going up against Miami. So a couple indicators there for me just to shy away from a little bit. But the guys like LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges have tournament winning upside, and they can definitely pop off. I just think it's less likely in this type of matchup and Gordon Hayward returning.
All right. So is there anybody deeper that may not be impacted as much either at that spot or simply from game script that we can look at to attack from Charlotte?
Honestly, no, I think it's okay if you just don't target them by any means. I think if they're like one of your last guys in and you're building a lineup by hand, I have no issues if you fall on a Charlotte player. It's just like I would avoid the Plumlee, Washington back and forth. They're not getting much usage when getting minutes, even because they're just sharing the court with guys like Hayward, Rozier, Bridges, and Ball. So it's just they're not a priority by any means. I think they're just better plays on the slate than these guys. Yeah. I prefer the Miami side a lot more than I do the Charlotte side.
Even from a pay down standpoint, absolutely. No, right.
Yeah. No, yeah, there's no need to pay down. Yeah, I think it's a little way too cute for a slate of this size, I think.
Absolutely. Look, I don't have any 3-point prop for Cody Martin, so don't worry here. But look, Terry, man, last night, and I know because I hit it, right? 4+ threes was plus 172. And it just was a better return than going over his I think 2.5 or what have you on the books. So look, he went 4 of 14 3 attempts to get that number. 5 tonight is really, I think, the best way to play him. And you can get that for what? Plus 270. So I'm going all in on the T Rozier train right here, man. And I'm going 5+ threes at this point. I'm putting the same amount. Like I'm taking what I had last night and we're rolling it over.
Damn, that's a ballsy play, man. 5 threes is a ton of threes.
But look, he hit 4 right last
Mhm.
game with 14 jacks. And you know this, Rinpack. Nobody's telling that man to stop shooting.
True. Yeah, he definitely likes shooting it. If he's going to shoot it 14 times from the outside,
He may
if you're
shoot
going to,
20.
huh?
He may shoot it 20 times in a game. We don't know.
Yeah, he might. It's just that I respect Miami's defense a decent amount. So that's my only concern. And they probably already know Rozier shot the ball from three so much. So the game plan might be scripted to avoid Rozier get those threes up. That's why I'm a little hesitant. But for sprinkling a little bit in, I think you can definitely have some fun with it.
All right, man. So let's flip it here. Halfway point on our third game, and we'll go from, you talk about a difference as far as tempo expected. Now, the big thing is LeBron James and Anthony Davis. What happens with LeBron? We have the Knicks in town. Let's put the Knicks on the back burner and just talk, because that's the bigger story with what happens with LeBron and your bets with Anthony Davis and everything else that trickles down, right?
Yeah, that's going to be pretty big in this situation. It's like the news is just going to change everything in that game by a ton. I mean, do they need a LeBron James against the Knicks team to get a dub? I mean, the team's talented enough where they should be able to beat a very hapless Knicks team. Julius Randle's been kind of a sissy about everything of late, avoiding the media and just like unfollowing the team on social media. Like, come on, man up a little bit and face the media. Like, everyone has a bad day. I honestly think DFS players should have post-game conferences about their plays and the night before or the night of, just because it's kind of outrageous about some plays I see on there. But a guy like Julius Randle has been in Knicks media quite a bit. This Knicks team's kind of been dysfunctional of late. Yeah, the LeBron situation is just going to pinpoint everything in this game, just because he's such a massive piece of news and how this affects the usage on that team. Guys like Russ and AD. There's so much less appealing. Don't get me wrong. If LeBron still plays his 80 and Russ in play, yes, I think it would be AD still, but LeBron just is going to just soak up the ball so much.
So let's look at this from, I guess, the two hypotheticals. LeBron's in. How do you play this?
Yeah, if LeBron's in and we get no minutes limit on LeBron James, I think you can definitely sprinkle him in, but I still like going to Anthony Davis. I have a big Anthony Davis bias in DFS for me. I always tend to be over the field on a guy like him. It worked out in his first season. It didn't work out so much last season, but now we're in a position where I think we might get these guys with LeBron coming in, heading into the slate. A lot of people are going to be a little cautious with that and not aggressively roster AD. And I think AD still has a massive upside in this matchup.
All right. So what happens if LeBron's out?
Now, if LeBron's out, let's go back to Russ and AD. No questions about it. And you can definitely sprinkle in guys like Malik Monk.
Yeah.
You can definitely sprinkle in guys like, as gross as it sounds, there's no Carmelo Anthony. Go back to THT, Taylor Horton Tucker, with no Carmelo. So that's a pretty kind of underrated news with no Carmelo leaving that game due to the hamstring injury. I think we can definitely get over the field on a guy like THT tonight.
Yeah, you mentioned Monk and just, bouncing around different salaries there, depending on the site, 20, Yahoo. And again, it's only a 5-game slate, so we don't have a ton of different choices here. Depending on the news, that's definitely going to influence, and assuming that LeBron's out, that's definitely going to bump up his ownership across the board. Is there a number that you're looking at where you're thinking, you know what, it's just not worth it if the field is catching on? Like $20 may be fine now if he's at 12 to 13%, but if he bumps up in that 25-30%, then maybe you're finding other value in that same price range.
And you're saying this is who again?
For Malik Monk, if LeBron's out.
If LeBron is out, it's an interesting decision point with a guy like Monk. I mean, I like him on DK where you get the 3-point bonus even at 6K, but on FanDuel he comes in at what's his price tag on FanDuel as a 6,600. Yes, it's a DK only play for me. Only DK only play for me with a 3-point bonus. If LeBron's out, yeah, he's only a DK only play at 6K for me.
All right, and as far as AD is concerned, LeBron in, LeBron out. You mentioning that alongside with Westbrook, but just looking at the field as well, not totally high by any means. I mean, we have him at about 18%, 19%. Do you think that changes drastically? Clearly with LeBron out, but with LeBron in, how much do you think his ownership is going to really be influenced?
I think a significant amount. I think people are just going to shy away from Anthony Davis when they hear LeBron James in. And I still think you can still roster Anthony Davis.
Well, you can counter that, right?
Sorry?
You can counter that clearly if there's going to be a push away from that from the field.
Yeah, and I think if LeBron plays, he's dealing with a knee injury. It'll be a minutes monitoring situation, if not a all-out minutes limit. So I still think Anthony Davis can put up a GPP winning performance at that price tag. I mean, he's been playing pretty well in terms of fantasy wise. We've been seeing shades of New Orleans Anthony Davis in terms of fantasy production over the past week. So I still think we got to ride it. I think LeBron knows if this team wants to win, Anthony Davis has to be putting up those numbers night in and night out. They got to get out of that playing game. They got to get out of that playing game in the West.
You know, you may be onto something, by the way. And I don't know if this is the first time you've brought this up or if this is something that you've repeated over your shows. So forgive me if this is the first, since it's the first time I've heard it from you. But this is a paywall opportunity here for our site, where if you offered a daily like $7.99 Awesemo plus, whatever you wanted, behind the scenes, whatever you wanted to call it, behind the rope, and Rinpack and others after anytime, if they finish dead last or number one, whatever it may be, smash a slate or shit happens, you get that instant press conference and you get to interact. And maybe we give away like 6 seats to it for the community, because as Jacob says, he has a lot of questions for you and the rest of the Awesemo team post slate. So you may be onto a nice moneymaker here if the bosses are listening, you know, and you're one of them. So you're up there at top of it, aren't you?
No, yeah, I always say it's always interesting to see how people land on certain constructions.
Great idea.
And but I mean, we're all players in our own right. We all have our own strategies, but it's a lot easier to talk about your plays when you have a great day, and you're like gotta hide in a corner when you have a bad one, and like why did that happen? So it's it really would bring out the best of the players. So it'd be fun, and chat would be ready to go. I mean, chat would be their own, they'd be their own menace. And you think New York media is mad? Imagine if chat was their own media.
I'm telling you, man. Look at that. You're right. Like we could give away a VIP seat or two where they could be in on the Zoom and actually have their face. You know, Mr. Rinpack, what were you thinking there when you went to the punt versus, you know, something along those lines. But then you're right. The chat would be active as well. Super chat for days on this thing. Look, I'm just trying to make it valuable from a front office standpoint here. And I know how they define valuable. So that's all I'm saying. Look at the chat here. I'm telling you, take my money. Here you go. You'd be the first person. You'd be our flagship with it. You and Alan.
And then I mean, that'd be a ton of fun. And it'd be always interesting to see how like a player or Alex or you or Lofty or Adam would answer these questions. A lot of times it comes down to like obviously simulations of why you landed on that player and whatnot, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like, why are you so much on Alfred and Şengün last night? And little things like that, just noticing, trying to be a little bit ahead of the field, but it'd be fun. And I don't think every player would want to do it. People would shy away like Julius Randle, I'm sure, but it would definitely be fun in my opinion.
Look, man, I'm telling you, if you get Adam after he smashes some random PGA slate where he doesn't know what the hell's going on, but it's, you know, his data and analytics, and you get him on, and people like, what were you doing? How did you know John Rahm to fade Rahm? Could you imagine?
You would get Adam with a bottle of Woodford, and he'd be definitely letting you know why he played his plays. And on a bad night, you probably might get Adam with I don't know, some Crystal Palace vodka, some awful vodka, or something like that.
I love it, man. All right, let's hit the Knicks here. And a little more than Randall, of course. And I see the chat generally agreeing with you as far as, look, if this is a game to get up, it would be tonight. And looking at the importance of this, not to say the Knicks have been stellar on the road by any means. It's a super short line, and that's all pending on LeBron, we know. But let's start with Randall a little deeper as far as how you're approaching than anybody else. And this is where I do actually have a prop that I think is grounded in reason that we can attack when we're done here.
Yeah, so the Knicks side of things, I mean, it's a Lakers matchup, national television. Thibodeau's been very on Thibodeau of late, especially in the backcourt. We've seen the rotation of guys like Burks, Quickly, Kemba Walker, even Evan Fournier at times, where the minutes are just kind of up for grabs. And the only guys who have been playing consistent minutes have been Randall and Barrett. They've been getting the most minutes night in, night out. And it's really, really tough to pinpoint on which guy in the Knicks backcourt is going to get those minutes. On a Lakers matchup, man, Kemba Walker has fallen so cheap. Like, he's not this bad. Maybe he is. I just don't understand why they're not playing him all these minutes until D Rose comes back. But I guess he's been really bad in the Thibodeau system, and things are just not gelling over there in New York. It's pretty evident it's not working. But in terms of targeting upside, it's got to be Julius Randle, 8,700. You're buying low, man. The media's on his case. Maybe it's his last week as a Knick. Maybe he wants out, which is really, and he's been, I don't know if he said anything publicly about the Knicks not tailoring to him. Not like, I don't think Julius Randle's a top 20 player or anything. I definitely don't, but he definitely is getting paid like one. I think $177 million, which is a ton of money.
It's right.
Yeah. So I don't know what teams want that contract, but it's good. I'm going to have to take my chances with Randle. And if you fall on a Fournier on FanDuel, no issues, because he can definitely spike that 3-point upside. And I got to think Kemba Walker's going to have a game at some point. It's just, he's just got to get going. He's a much better basketball player than this. It's gross, I know, but man, I got to hunt some upside. And Kemba Walker again give you 30 fantasy points at that salary. I'll have a little interest, but damn, he's been awful. And Tibbs also agrees.
Yeah. So how much of this on the slate tonight? And look, you referenced the salary there for Walker across the board. It's going to be bottom right down to 10, right? As far as punt option on Yahoo. But how much do you feel like, you don't have to per se, but if this is a larger slate, are we even having this conversation about Walker in this game? If there are 9-10 games on the slate with more options, is this still trying to catch Walker on the downswing popping up? Or is it just, look, I don't even need to focus so much on a guy who's been struggling like this?
Yeah, it's just I'm hunting upside, and
Okay.
I have it's a risk tolerance play. If you're okay with the guy giving you like 5 or 6 fantasy points and getting his minutes cut because of poor play, Kemba Walker's your guy. But he's also the type of guy I think Thibodeau would be willing to ride the hot hand. And if Kemba Walker is hot, he's putting up 30 fantasy points at the minimum, I think.
All right, so Barrett as well. Quickly, these guys were popping up with some decent DK ownership, maybe from countering the field or even getting ahead of it. As far as Barrett at 14%, we have on DK, and quickly was up there in the high single digits. Updated 5%. So anything there that we can get to, either Barrett, another guy at the top that people may be focusing on, or trying to get a little deeper there with quickly and trying to make sense of that backcourt, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think in long shot tournament options, sprinkling in some quickly because the upside's there. Alec Burks is too expensive. RJ Barrett, it's a minutes play, but the upside at that price tag, I'll take my chances on FanDuel at 6,200, 6,900 on DK. Way too damn expensive for me. Over there in Yahoo, I mean, Randall, I'll take my chances with Julius Randle at 31. But everyone else, Kemba Walker's $10. That's how far he's fallen. So, I mean, you gotta hope he has one of those remember me, I'm Kemba type of situation games, because he can do it. I just hope Thibodeau just gives him those minutes. We just haven't seen them over the past, I don't know, since Christmas, since he popped off. That one game against Christmas, he popped off. It's been downhill since.
Look, Adam Palmer on the super chat putting his money where his mouth is. You have to respect that. Don't be scared of Walker, with the exclamation mark at the end of that and the super chat associated with it. But maybe it's just a matter of value here at the very least. All right. Anybody else on the Knicks before I hit you with Fournier?
Robinson, a flyer on FanDuel where you get blocks as a bonus, but he's got to avoid the Anthony Davis situation, avoid foul trouble. There's a pathway. There's like one pathway of getting there for him if he just racks up a ton of blocks and backdoors himself into a double-double. But he's a long shot tournament play. But be aware, it's not easy to go up against AD on the other side.
And it's only on FanDuel, right? I mean, again,
FanDuel, Yahoo, yeah.
Oh, Yahoo, right. I was just going to mention $20 on Yahoo, 4% or so projected rostership there. So you could definitely, if you're getting to him in that capacity, maybe over to the field in there. Look, you brought up Fournier, and I think a lot of people are going to focus on makes and say, my goodness, how the hell is this guy going to make 8 threes again like he did? But when we target these bets, it's all about volume. 12, 7, 12, 5 is like the floor that you should get. And even still, in like 25 to 35 minutes, this guy can jack up anywhere from 7 to 12 threes. So not going crazy here by any means. It's a number. I understand that. But over 3.5 threes that's his total. I didn't even push this. I just went over his total. 3.5 threes plus money back plus 140. I'm also taking advantage of the fact that you can shoot threes against the Lakers. So there's a combo here of volume, not necessarily needing 40 minutes for this bet to pay out, and the matchup as well against the Lakers.
You said 4+ or 5+?
No, over 3.5.
Oh, over 3.5.
So four made threes plus 140. But over 3.5 is his total, meaning I didn't jump it. I didn't push it.
Yeah, I don't mind that, especially like Fournier. We've seen that happen throughout the season. And you also just hope he gets hot, because if he's hot, he's going to stay on the court too. So,
okay. You don't hate it.
No, I don't hate it. I actually do kind of like it, actually.
Look, man, you know, look, I will take any type of tail possible from you, because then that just bumps up the aura of the play. So I'm behind it, man. I can't promise you the opposite, by the way. I might ruin it for you.
Yeah, I'm really interested. A lot of people think Julius Randle's a top 20 player in chat, which blows my mind. I don't think so.
I missed that because I saw a lot of like hidden and negative stuff on Randle, basically agreeing with you, like F Randle. No, but again, I don't know what argument. You sure this isn't like Terry McBride's burner account pushing that Randle is a top 20 player?
I could be Terry McBride's burner account and him wearing his
LaMarca sneaking in or something.
He probably has a Julius Randle 2022 MVP, a tattooed summer on that calf muscle somewhere.
All right, man. I love it. So let's hit now the final couple of games here. And a reminder as well, we're telling you about Prize Picks all the time and what we're doing with Prize Picks. It's very easy. It's the home of the over-unders. And you can even go to Odd Shopper ahead of time, the free tool that we have for you, and sort by X win and see what you can match up. You're not going to lay any juice over there at Prize Picks. You just put together a 3, 4, 5+, and you can even go cross sport. If you know anything from the upcoming football game to something tonight, you want to just bounce around, you're good to go there, and we'll get you started. Just click that link below. $100 will match your first deposit. And on top of that, we'll give you 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Now, that's not right here, all right? See, 80 on the Super Chat. If Randle is top 20, Michigan basketball is too. You don't need to bring Rinpack down with this while support. Like, that's a wash right there. You're supporting his one comment by attacking him on the other. You've just balanced the scales.
No, shout out to Aid, man. He's been crushing it. I've been seeing him a lot on the top of the leaderboards. He's been doing really well in NBA DFS. So shout out to the success. But come on, the Michigan hate. I get it. I support when both the teams are doing well, and I just prefer when Michigan beats the other states go in the state.
Right. And look, to be fair, it's like more Michigan ribbing. It's a lot of Julius hate. So yeah, you've got a lot more people supporting you on that, I think, than the opposite. But yeah, I don't know if it was maybe just somebody on the chat who likes to argue. And that's what it was, where it's like, you could say anything. It's like, no way, Rinpack, are you kidding me? He's definitely a top 5 player. It's like, whoa. Come on. Let's just slow down here for a second. All right. Now we move on. Final 2 games here. Bucks on the road at Portland. I've been just targeting Portland for days.
I'm gonna hold you here. Here.
What do we need?
Apparently our producer went to Penn State, and Penn State hates Michigan. They have this week called Michigan Week. They hate us. And they'll visit Ann Arbor, and Penn State's just another game for us. And it's just like they have this game marked, circled on their map for years. And damn, I did not know why we deserve to get hated like this. But as I've gotten older and graduated both from undergrad and grad school there, Michigan alumni is very arrogant. It's just how things are at Michigan and Ann Arbor. But the Penn State hate is so out of the blue because they are so far away from Ann Arbor, but they hate us. They absolutely detest us.
Oh, is that right? See, this reminds me of what happens with the Eagles and the Cowboys, where in Philadelphia, for the week leading up to each game, 2, maybe 3, depending on how many times they'll play each year, there's Cowboys week, and you hear stories about fans who were at the game when Michael Irvin got hurt, they booed him, what have you. And then, just working in media, I have friends that work in Dallas, and they say the same thing. Like, we don't have Eagles week. There's no Philly. There's none of that. It's just another week. Yeah. So maybe it's something about us Maybe it's our complex up here that you're exposing, Rinpack.
It might be, But on to the next game we go. I just had to give Mike, the producer, some love there.
Well, I purposely avoided bringing up Penn State earlier when I said I didn't want to bring up the school in our area because I knew that it would pull away from the positive vibes that we've established here on the Deeper Dive, and leave it up to Awesemo, of course, to be the sobering reminder of reality.
Yeah. So and there's a guy in chat who brings up Mike Valenti. He's a longtime Detroit radio guy. He's been there since I was like in elementary school, and he's the biggest Michigan hater. He's like the guy who does the afternoon drive here. He hates Michigan, so it's just like the state guys hate Michigan. At Michigan, we just hate Ohio State, and everyone else is just like
fair enough.
And the hate's very, very mutual between Ohio State and Michigan. Michigan State hates us, though. They absolutely hate us. Like they want us to die.
Yeah, it's amazing. All of the hate that you elicit around the conference. All right, man, we'll keep it moving. We have these final two games to get to, and a lot to target from DFS to even a betting standpoint in the Bucks Blazers. We'll start on the road here with Milwaukee, and it's Giannis at the top there, getting a 23% at least on DK. We know about the salary, so let's just approach him first and then kind of trickle down to Middleton and everybody else, really, as far as what else we can do with the Buck squad.
I love Giannis. Keep in mind, could be a blowout in this game. Portland's awful, but Giannis, it's going to be on the backs of Giannis. And anytime the player can be the highest scoring player on the slate, and Giannis on this slate certainly can do that by 15 or 20 points. That's how great of a fantasy player he is, and I think he's a great play tonight. I know he's expensive, but you got to pay up for nice things, and Giannis is certainly one of those. And at that price tag, 12-1, there's going to be some value in the OKC game to jam him in there, but 12-1 is expensive. He definitely can smash that price tag. 11-4 in FanDuel, much more feasible, and I think he is a pretty, obviously, there's not many superstars on this slate. Giannis is definitely one of them, and if you can get to him with like some sound value, I'd love your lineup. So I really like Giannis tonight.
What about with Middleton and Holiday? We're looking similar, DK, it's pretty similar in that range, 75, 79, Holiday, Middleton respectively. And ownership is pretty similar as well, 18, 16 and a half, same layout there, Holiday and Middleton respectively. So we're under that 8K range, at least on DK. And again, we don't have a ton of teams to go through necessarily. So how much more maybe appealing are either, if not both of these guys on the shorter slate?
Yeah, I think I like Jrue Holiday's price tag. It's fallen far enough. I mean, 7,500 on both sites. Matchup, pretty awesome. On the other side, $31 on Yahoo. Preferred Holiday to Middleton. There is before these guys went down with COVID and injuries, Jrue Holiday was balling out, man. And I think he's get back to that early season form soon. And I think it's a nice opportunity to take your chances on a guy like Jrue Holiday, especially at these price tags across the board. I like him a lot more than Middleton. More ball handling from Holiday, a lot more ways to pay off that price tag. Does pick up steals at a pretty decent rate, so that's pretty favorable on sites like Yahoo and FanDuel as well.
How much can we kind of toe that line? Because you're right, the blowout factor is definitely in play here. So if you weren't going top heavy and you wanted to take advantage of saving money and spending elsewhere, is there an option or two that you could toe the line and get some quality minutes at the start and then also get some tailing minutes as the blowout begins, if it's a Grayson Allen or maybe even a Bobby Portis, a little bit higher cost?
Yeah, it's going to be Dante DiVincenzo for me. I think DiVincenzo obviously was a starter on this team till he got injured in the first round last year. And I think he's slowly getting back himself into conditioning. And the guys like Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton have all been playing pretty well this year. So DiVincenzo hasn't been needed to play these minutes, but I think they still would play him in the back end of a blowout there. So I like taking some chances with a guy like DiVincenzo. He put on one of the best final NCAA championship games I've ever seen against Michigan when he's at Villanova. DiVincenzo is someone who I think I will be targeting above the field at those respective price tags, especially on DK, 3,800. He can definitely outperform that price tag in multiple ways in this matchup.
All right. So anybody else you want to hit there? I mean, we talked about Portis, and if you look at Allen, looking at anybody else that you could target from even an ancillary standpoint, where you're plugging in last couple of guys on your roster tonight.
Yeah, Portis is fine. He's okay. The upside is tough to get when everyone is back. He's kind of option 4 behind Giannis, Drew, and Middleton there. So it's definitely a tough for me to land on Portis, but he does fall on a great value perspective. If he's like, I'm not building around for Portis. If I land on Portis, it's okay.
All right. So if I were to tell you tonight, Rinpack, that Middleton would take 7 threes, would you play 3+ at plus 102?
3 threes at plus 102 for Middleton?
If I were to tell you, basically assure you that he would take 7, that he could go 3 of 7 tonight, and you're basically getting that just over even money. I've saved you actually 2 cents on this play from what you're going to get at Petty.
Yeah, I'll go for it. I would like at least 8 to get myself interested, but
Okay.
Middleton, he can definitely just do that. No issues landing on that type of bet.
And that's what we've seen, 4 of the last 5 games. Again, you had that loss against the Nuggets where they got their shit pounded out of them, right? But outside of that, 4 of the last 5 games, he's landed on 7 attempts. And I think you can look at that as a number. And again, the volume is there, right? Yes, ideally we would like 3 of 8, and then you're comfortable. But for a guy who can knock down, and again, I'm not so concerned about the makes as we've seen, at least the volume, the consistent volume. That's what I wanted to target, or at least there. So enough, at least, if I can get 7 as a floor. Look, 6 threes, I'm screwed. But if I get 7 as a floor, I think there's a very realistic opportunity, especially if he's part of the blowing out. That's all. That's why I bring it up there.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's fine. And keep in mind, these are for the chat at least. These are long shot plays, and have fun with these type of bets, type of situations. So, yeah, I know
Rinpack is not giving them out. I love that little disclaimer right there, which is like, yo, these are Shander's ideas, not mine.
Yeah, I want my mentions to be blown up when Middleton in and outs that third 3.
That's me. You can hit me on here. All right, man. Let's hit the Blazers. By the way, love the Blazers. They are just money makers over stretches when it comes to 3 props. But let's just look at CJ, Simons. We know these guys here, especially with the absence of Powell, are going to continue to benefit from that. And then anybody else now that there's volume to kind of go around with Powell being traded.
Yeah. So keep in mind the Portland situation. There is a lot of pending news here. All of these guys are questionable. Justice Winslow, Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, all the scrubs they got back for those solid role players they gave up on the other side are all questionable. And there's a chance they can all play, and there's a chance that they can't play. So it's like truly 50-50. Now, if they don't play, I think these guys make for outstanding value options, even against a tough Milwaukee matchup. I'm looking at Anthony Simons. CJ McCollum has the upside to break the slate. We saw CJ Allaby get the start, and Tony Snell played well. Tony Snell, it'd be tough for me to witness what happened on back-to-back nights, but the minutes will be there against this Milwaukee matchup. But I think targeting Simons on any site is fine, but I'm hoping for a McCollum game of late. I haven't seen it much without him. He's been kind of taking a backseat for Simons as Simons continues to chuck those threes. But if these guys are all appealing, if we get none of those guys playing, Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow tonight, and we'll find out hopefully a couple hours before lock if everything is approved in that trade or not.
Yeah, from just a numbers standpoint on McCollum, you're right. I mean, the volume, there's not going to be any less opportunity. If anything, there's going to be more. So even if he's struggling or not having the dominant night that you'd want, if you raise the ceiling as far as how many attempts or attempts you may take from the floor, then he still may have a decent night compared to just having less looks, as deferring to Simon. So beyond that, is there anybody, you mentioned Snell there, is there anybody else you wanted to hit? Nurkic was popping. We talked about him kind of as another pivot at the center earlier at the 5, especially on Yahoo or even FanDuel. Any interest there?
Oh, sorry. 1 second. I got caught up. Apparently, those guys are all out. If I'm let me just make sure. I just want to clarify myself. 1 moment.
All right. So, did we get News God in the house there, or are you just looking at something else?
I'm just looking and make sure I didn't misspeak there. If those guys are all in or all out with the trade that happened. Let me take a look.
Oh yeah, that's a good point there, right? Because I don't know if they're even in. Are they in our pool when it comes to ownership at that point?
No,
think
yeah,
they
it's tough
were.
to say. No, I'm just saying, like, well, like if those players are going to be active or out, the guys who got traded to
Right.
Portland.
Right. That's what I'm
Currently,
saying.
Chad is telling me that they're all out. I think
Yeah.
it's still questionable. I'm not sure, but keep it.
Okay.
Okay, so definitely a situation to monitor there. So just wait up until I guess around when those games start about what's going to happen with that Portland situation. That's going to change a lot. And it's being in the game at the late night, and there is another game afterwards with significant values. Oh, same time, so you can definitely swap to that other game as well. So keep an eye there. Sorry, I got backtracked and lost my
No, no,
train of
no.
thought.
You're all good. And News God confirming that as well. Doesn't think that they're playing yet. So
Okay.
I think that we're looking at that. The status was from out, but it doesn't look like they're actually going to play
All
still.
right. All right. Keep an
So
eye on News God as he dominates the news throughout the night, especially tonight. There's going to be some key news to keep an eye on. But you were talking about some of the other Portland guys, right?
yeah, I don't know. Did you mention Macklemore?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you can definitely sprinkling in some Dennis Smith and some Macklemore in some long shot tournament plays. I think those guys are fine to take some chances on. Nothing too exciting. Dennis Smith comes in pretty cheap, $3,200 on DraftKings. Solid value if you want to spend up and get a guy like Giannis. 3,700 on FanDuel. It's okay. I just think you're going to need him to be performing an outlier performance for him to pay off that price tag on FanDuel and Yahoo. I just think it just seems so much safer to spend up at guard tonight.
All right, so let's hit the Thunder and let's look at the Thunder Kings. Pardon me. On the way out, I'll spare you with my madness because the books have already caught up to Simons and McCollum. I mean, you're getting like just north of 205 to 250 now for Simons 5+ and McCollum's 5+.
You nailed it. I think the first time we started doing this was Simons on his own
Yep.
against Washington. He hit 5 threes in the first half, right?
Yeah, and then the books just caught up because they know that this dude could take 12 to 15 threes and a half. And
yeah, you're got too much power. You're changing the books over
I
there.
know, right? Exactly. That's me and my coat. All right, man, let's hit it. The Thunder, and they're popping up everywhere. As we see from an ownership standpoint, Baisley, Jerome, we had the Dort news as well. So we see from Williams, Jerome, all the way up to Baisley, these guys are dominating our ownership, projected ownership. That's on DK. So are you pretty much standard with these three guys to the field, or maybe find yourself underweight because of all the popularity with these cheap options?
Yeah, they're popular. We saw Mamadi Diakite get the start and play 31 minutes last night. His minutes have been going up there in for OKC. Diakite seems like a fringe value option, the min 3K power forward center option. But guys like Darius Baisley, the minutes should be there. Kenrich Williams played a handful of minutes. Trey Mann and Ty Jerome, a toss up. I don't mind if you want to save the $800 off of Mann to Jerome. You can do a lot with $800 on DraftKings tonight. Well, Josh Giddey's very expensive, 7,600. And don't get me wrong, I think Giddey has triple double upside in this matchup. So Giddey at 7,600, yes, might look expensive on a surface level, but the upside is there for a guy like Giddey. He tends to play really well without Shea. We haven't seen that super ceiling fantasy performance yet from Giddey, but it's going to happen. The guy's vision, passing vision, is amazing.
You got me thinking now. To look, Giddy's plus 1,000 on the books for a triple double. Worth it?
Yeah, I think so.
Love it. All right. Anybody else on the Thunder before we end with the Kings that you think is worth a mention here for the field?
On the King side of things, it's a nice, great matchup against Oklahoma City. So, I mean, the De'Aaron Fox situation, we keep getting that later and later in the night. I just got to think he doesn't play at this point. I could be easily wrong. If he doesn't play, Halliburton is a fantastic play across the board. I love getting the Barnes. Rashawn Holmes' minutes are all over the place. Tough to go there with confidence. Halliburton and Davion Mitchell would be pretty solid if there is no De'Aaron Fox tonight. Buddy Hield's minutes, he seems another guy to get traded, and they're just being cautious with those minutes so they can get something back from him type of situation. But Buddy Hield, even at 5K, can get you those 3-pointers in a hurry on DK. 4,700. You just like, obviously, Fox not to be there. Hopefully the minutes come with it as well. We saw an eruption game from Mo Harkless the other night. He's going to play those minutes, but his price has definitely gone up on Yahoo, and I believe on DraftKings he's 3,800. And Harkless is such a boom or bust guy. We got the boom game the other day. I definitely think we can see the opposite happening tonight.
Yeah, and last I would just with Barnes, as far as workable salary that you have, cheaper on FanDuel, maybe even the best on Yahoo at $22. Field is at 23%, so no secret by any means.
Yeah, no secret by any means. And Nurkic, someone asked about Nurkic in the chat. I know we didn't get a touch on him. I think he's
Oh,
a
I thought
fine.
we did it. Oh, you know what? I brought him up when we
Oh,
had
okay, I
that
was looking
pause
at
about
that. That's
who was
on
playing.
me.
No, that's all good. No, don't worry about it, man.
I think he's a pretty outstanding player on FanDuel at $7,700. No issues if you fall on it. And getting above the ownership, he's coming with significant amount of ownership. With the field slightly above it, seems fine. Nothing aggressively over the field on a guy like Nurk for me in a Milwaukee matchup. But the Kings OKC game is going to be, I think, it wouldn't shock me if we see someone come in from that game to be in the optimal lineup tonight. Makes a lot of sense if we might get a couple there. Just two bad teams going off against each other, and they're kind of priced appropriately. And the Kings side of things, if there's no De'Aaron Fox, a lot of things could go in their way for that team tonight.
All right, so Greg, LaMarca, the two of them coming up right now, live before lock. We appreciate you all hanging with us, having some fun with us this past hour. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, not just for us here, really just for Rinpack, but for the fellas coming up as well. And subscribe if you're not already. Thanks to Mike Awesemo. He's not going anywhere, like you aren't going anywhere. Live before lock. Any news that comes down, they'll have it before this slate locks. Rinpack, my man, my brother, always a pleasure.
Right back at you, man. Ton of fun tonight.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Lauren squared. Yeah, all good. What's going on, guys? It is the Awesemo NBA Live Before Lock show, sponsored by Prize Picks. And we have another pretty interesting slate to talk about. Only 5 games. Early in the day, it seemed pretty straightforward to me. And then a monkey wrench gets thrown into the whole picture because LeBron James goes from being listed as doubtful to being listed as questionable, which then obviously changes pretty much everything we have to talk about tonight. Other players are on the injury report they're waiting for news on. De'Aaron Fox is questionable. Marvin Bagley is questionable. We don't know whether the players from Portland are ultimately going to end up playing or not today. That is something that's still in flux. Matt, well, we have to start by asking this. What do you think is going to happen with LeBron today?
I think he wants to play. Typically, when somebody gets upgraded, I tend to put that as they're trying to play. Same way as if a player gets downgraded, I tend to think that they're not going to play. So I am now operating under the assumption that LeBron is going to be in the lineup. I don't think you can play him necessarily. I mean, he's still pretty pricey. There's a chance he's limited, but it definitely detracts from some of the other options that you might consider for the Lakers.
Yeah, and I'm assuming he's in right now. It's one of these situations where, the game is at 8:30. It's only a 5-game slate. So there is going to be flexibility here. If we find out by let's say 8 o'clock, we still have that game to make swaps to the 2 later games. So something else that's really changed for me is had you built lineups earlier today at all or no?
A smidge.
Okay, so I did the strategy show this morning with EMAC. It was a bunch of fun. I'm wearing my T-shirt today, EMAC 2024.
Let's go.
So that was big. But so the other thing also is I had lineups built for the strategy show. Lots happened. EMAC told the world's worst ever joke. I was wearing the shirt with him on it. But also, I had said at the time that when I was building lineups, I wasn't really getting to Giannis that much. The reason being is because I built lineups, I wasn't getting to Giannis that much. But now as I'm rebuilding my lineups with LeBron in, I was getting to a lot of Anthony Davis earlier in the day. I'm not getting to him as much now because I have him in, which means I'm getting to more of Giannis. So it's not really something that's a direct 1v1. Like obviously Giannis doesn't benefit from LeBron playing, but he makes it into more of my lineups just because I don't have AD to pay up for as confidently now.
Yeah, I thought Davis looked really appealing at 10-1. I'll still have some for sure. Davis can still get us into the 50s, even if LeBron is going to play. But certainly Giannis becomes more appealing. And the other thing, that we haven't really talked about to start the show is that, at least in my opinion, there is a ton of viable value options, specifically the Thunder. Right. If you go into our NBA projections right now, the 5 best value plays on the slate on DraftKings all play for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So you really have to ask yourself, how many of those guys do you want? Do you feel comfortable using a couple of them? If you do, then it's pretty darn easy to squeeze Giannis in if you want.
The 5 most rostered players today, or actually, wait, is this 5? So 5. You go over to our ownership projections right now. You're just giving out some free information to the people. So do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because this isn't actually our free content there. Our free content is the NBA player projections, which is also really valuable. But I'm just going to give out some ownership projections just to make a point. The 5 most popular projected players on DK tonight: Darius Bazley, Ty Jerome, Kenrich Williams, Trey Mann, and Mamadi Diakite. Over on FanDuel, the most popular players are Josh Giddey, Kenrich Williams. Then we have Giannis and Nurkic. And then it's Bazley, Ty Jerome. Diakite's a little bit farther down. The point being, everybody's playing a lot of Oklahoma City Thunder players. I know you had just mentioned them there. Is it also something you're going to be very heavy on?
Yeah, I think that there are certain players for the Thunder that I am very interested in. Diakite, for example, at the minimum, I really like him quite a bit. I'm always going to be interested in a big man who's priced at the minimum, who has the potential to play 30 plus minutes. He hasn't been the greatest per minute producer so far this year. He's actually been pretty mediocre, but still a big man with the upside for 30 minutes at the minimum is just super enticing. The guy to me that I will have virtually none of is Kenrich Williams. I don't understand why everyone is gravitating towards him. He's a solid player, but he's not starting. He's not seeing an abundance of minutes. He's not all that good on a per minute basis. He's averaged 0.82. That's fine, but we can do a little bit better. So I'll be underweight on him. I'll be well overweight on Diakite, and then the other guys, I think you can kind of make stands either way. I'll probably be close to average on those three.
Yeah, the Kenrich Williams one is a little hard to nail down his minutes. Like you said, he comes off the bench, and in yesterday's game, he played really well on a fantasy basis, and I played a bunch of him yesterday, but kind of feel like I got away with one because he only ended up playing, I think it was 23 minutes off the top of my head. Yep. If he's going to play those minutes, it's hard to expect that big of a production on a regular basis. And then you look at somebody like Diakite, who I think probably has a little more minutes upside than Kenrich Williams. Number one, he's starting, but then number two also, if you just look at his minutes last game, he played 30, and that was even though he picked up 5 personal fouls. So I think there's reason to think he could have played a couple extra more had that not been the case. If you look overall at the fantasy production for Diakite this year, not great, not bad either. 13 and a half minutes, 12 fantasy points per game. So if you give him, if you're giving him 30 minutes, then you're looking at mid 20s fantasy points, which is a little higher than I have Kenrich Williams projected for. So now one other question I want to ask you before we go position by position.
Yeah.
Are you seeing this as more of a stars and scrubs slate? It feels like every slate these days ends up being stars and scrubs, but is this different for you considering the only value we have is from OKC?
Yeah, I think it's the problem for me is that there aren't really a lot of studs that I want to play, right? I would be more open to going full stars and scrubs if I felt like there were a bunch of stars, right? Outside of Giannis, you've got now LeBron and AD, who knows what's going to happen with that, and Westbrook. You can lump him in there too. You've got the Phoenix guys, but they're really pricey at the moment. You've got Jimmy Butler. I guess he's in a great spot against Charlotte. So he's somebody that I would potentially be leaning towards, but like the issue is I can't find a ton of studs that I want to play, which kind of hurts when you're going for a stars and scrubs build.
Yeah. And by the way, we just got a super chat from Adam Palmer, which I think is a good rebuttal to your point here, Matt. So you're going to be doing a little back and forth with YouTube chat here. Adam Palmer saying,
Love it.
Dort is out. That is why he's getting to Kenrich Williams today. If Kenrich Williams starts, then I definitely think that makes him look more appealing. I'm not positive he's going to be the guy who starts in place of Lou Dort. He very well could be, but if he does end up starting in place of Lou Dort, for me personally, by the way, to address Adam's question, I'm giving most of those minutes to Ty Jerome for me. And I have 25% Kenrich Williams on DK. It's, that's a chunk of Kenrich Williams, just less than the field. But how do you respond to what he said about, well, Lou Dort is out?
Yeah, it's fair. But my question is like, okay, let's give Kenrich 30 minutes. I still don't think he has as much upside as Diakite at a more expensive salary. So unless you're like fully stacking this game, I just think he's like my least favorite of the Thunder pieces, right? We've seen him play close to 30 minutes in the past. Here's his game log, right? He had 28 in 23 minutes yesterday, but then 23 and a half, 15 and a half, 11 and a quarter, just under 20, 20.5, 19.5. Like that's not a guy that's all that exciting to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable. And looking at Kenrich Williams per minute rates overall for the entire season, it is also something you should point out. Very, very favorable matchup against the Sacramento Kings, who are going nowhere in a hurry. For the year, though, 21 and a half minutes, 17 and a half fantasy points for Kenrich Williams. So it's not as if he isn't playing that many minutes now. And then you start to think like, okay, what happens if we give him 30 at his current per minute rates? And then I think we're looking at, like 24 fantasy points for Kenrich Williams. If you're giving him 30 minutes at his current per minute production, then you say it's a favorable matchup against the Sacramento Kings, maybe get him to a 25 or 26 fantasy point projection. Once again, not bad for where he's priced at. I just kind of slightly prefer some of the other OKC guys. While I do think I'm probably a little bit higher on Kenrich than you, is he just an outright fade for you or somebody you're not going to be super high on?
He's somebody that I have none of at the moment. I might consider adding a sprinkle, but I kind of don't see for me, just talking from like a game theory perspective, what's the difference between me having 0 Kenrich and having 10 to 15% Kenrich? Like I'm going
well,
to
I mean,
lose
the answer
way.
is 15%, if I'm being literal.
Thank you, Professor. The odds are I'm losing either way, correct? So I would rather just give myself more outs on the off chance that it is a night where he does what I expect him to do, which is, give us in the low 20s to mid 20s and have there be stronger values out there.
All right, so let's go position by position now. And we could start by now which of these OKC players we're prioritizing at guard, where we've got Trey Mann is going to be pretty popular, Ty Jerome. There's a difference between Josh Giddey on FanDuel and DK. DK is about appropriately priced. FanDuel is way underpriced. But starting with DK, which of the OKC guards are you prioritizing?
Yeah, the Lou Dort situation definitely complicates things, because Mann has been the better player recently, but that's just been because of volume, right? Like Ty Jerome has actually been the better guy on a per minute basis. He's averaging 0.86 DraftKings points per minute this season. Mann is at 0.73. So if you think that the minute gap shrinks now that Dort is out, I think Jerome is the better play for sure, especially given the $800 price differential.
Yep, I like Ty Jerome quite a bit, and I do think he ends up starting today. If he doesn't start, then we're going to have to change our projections, change around some of our lineups some, because let's say Kenrich Williams starts and Ty Jerome comes off the bench. And obviously, I like Kenrich a little bit more. I like Ty Jerome a little bit less. That's just now how I've projected it at the moment. I like getting to Trey Mann as well. And let's talk about the Josh Giddey chalk, and starting with FanDuel, because on FanDuel, we're seeing Giddey priced at $6,500, a really cheap price point. And I mean, he was egregiously cheap in some reason. He was something like $5,600, $5,700, something like that. But now we've seen him priced up a little bit, but still not nearly enough at $6,500. He scored 33 or more fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games without SGA. What are you doing with the chalk Josh Giddey on FanDuel? Do you find the price just to be something that's unavoidable?
I think I'm going to be underweight on him on FanDuel. I've looked at him the last couple of slates and said, yeah, wow, this guy is just way too cheap. But he hasn't had that bonkers game that's really made me pay, right? Or that's really resulted in him crushing value. So now that he's up, I still think that overall in a vacuum, he's too cheap at 6,500, but I don't know if he necessarily has as high of a ceiling as maybe some others in the industry do. For Josh Giddey is good at a lot of things on a basketball court, but like he's not necessarily the best at getting his own shot at the moment. He's shooting 40% from the field, 25% from 3-point range. Now you put him around, alongside really no NBA talent. I think it could be a rough night for him as a scorer. So I certainly get it. Like he is a great play at 6,500 in a vacuum. But when you factor in the ownership, I think I'm okay with being underweight on him tonight.
Yeah. And by the way, also something to point out, because people are saying who starts for the Oklahoma City Thunder. The same lineup as yesterday, just Ty Jerome instead of Lou Dort. That's my expectation. Now, is that set in stone? Like I said before, no, I'm just making an educated guess. And then if it ends up being something different, we have late swap. We could change. We don't have to know for sure and lock it in stone now, but here's how I've projected OKC today. Starting lineup, Josh Giddey, Trey Mann, Ty Jerome, Darius Bazley, Diakite. That's my guess. Does it mean I'm right? No, that's just how I'm projecting the players right now, though. So that is what I'm assuming right now. And we did get some more super chats here. Adam, no, this wasn't Adam Palmer. This was Bill W. Who are you going to at small forward instead of Williams on DK? Well, to be clear, I still have exposure to Kenrich Williams, just a little bit less than the field now. As for the other small forwards I'm getting to a lot now, Jimmy Butler, and then another one being CJ Ellaby, just under the assumption I think those Portland Trailblazers guys, I know their statuses are uncertain, but I think there's a pretty good chance those guys end up sitting, which would then mean shortened rotation for Portland. CJ Ellaby could play a lot. Just to answer the super chat, who are a couple of your most rostered small forwards on DK right now, Matt?
Yeah, I see your Ellaby and your Jimmy Butler, and I will add Chris Middleton to the equation. It has not been a good run for Chris Middleton of late, but his price has dropped from 8,800 to 7,900 over the past week or so. I think 7,900 is a fair price tag for him, especially in a great matchup against Portland. There are some obvious blowout concerns with the Bucks tonight. But if you're going to play Giannis amid the blowout concerns, I see no reason why we can't also go to Chris Middleton at a reduced price tag.
All right. And the next super chat here from Michael Pizzulli. Hey, fellas, who are your 3 main building blocks for FanDuel? Good luck tonight. All right. The 3 players I have the most exposure to overall on FanDuel right now are Darius Bazley, Anthony Simons, and Josh Giddey.
So for me, it's Giannis. It is Ty Jerome. And I have a good bit of Kyle Lowry at 5,800.
Yeah, I love Kyle Lowry. I think Kyle Lowry is going way overlooked by the field. He's just not one of my 3 most rostered players. While we're on the topic of guards, I think that he's a good guy to talk about now as well, because there's a big salary difference on Kyle Lowry, DK to FanDuel. DK, I find him priced about appropriately. I'm not dying to roster him. On FanDuel, though, where he's at 5,800, I'm kind of surprised he's in chalk, because that is an egregious price for Kyle Lowry. I'm going to refresh ownership just to make sure nothing has changed. But at least before, he wasn't projected. And yeah, still not the case. 18% ownership on a 5-game slate at 5,800 Kyle Lowry. The only question here for me is, what are you expecting from him from a minute standpoint?
I expect him to get back to around 30 minutes tonight. And I think that's more than enough for him to potentially return value against the Hornets. There are a lot of teams that are in great spots tonight, but, certainly you can't sleep on a matchup versus Charlotte, who have played at the second fastest pace this season. So Miami, a notorious slow team. This is a, crank the Jets up spot for them. I think Kyle Lowry can give us over a fantasy point per minute. So as long as he gets to around 30 minutes, I like his chances of providing value with some upside.
Yep. I don't have any issue with that. Let's see. We caught up. Oh, here we have one more super chat from Ruguru 228. Any love for Avdia as a punt for DK single entry GPP? Let's see. I mean, the short answer is no, but let me see where I have Denny at. It'd be helpful if my computer was moving a little bit quicker today, which it isn't. So here's the issue with Denny is, even though we've got Bradley Beal out for the Wizards, it's not like this means all of a sudden we're getting a whole bunch of minutes from Denny. And he's also not a good points per minute fantasy producer. So the last few games without Beal, I mean, we've seen 26 minutes, 22, 26. So that's probably what we're expecting from Denny, is somewhere around mid-20s minutes. And if you look at his numbers for the year, he's not a very good points per minute fantasy producer. He plays 23 minutes per game, averages 18 fantasy points, and it's a really tough matchup against Phoenix. So I find it pretty difficult to project Denny for much more than 20 fantasy points. Is he somebody that you're getting to at all?
Yeah, I don't really have any at the moment. I have used Denny of late. The minutes, they were kind of trending up. They're still up a bit, but he's just not really good enough on a per minute basis to make the most of it. The usage is just so minimal. And like you said, the matchup with Phoenix, it's just not exciting. So I get where you're coming from. Like, it's an interesting pivot off of some of the chalk from the Thunder, but I just can't get there.
Now some more super chats. John Cooper, Greek Freak, a good placeholder for Lakers news. Yes. I didn't think I was going to be playing a lot of Giannis earlier in the day. I am now, because Anthony Davis is out of the mix for me. He was going to be my most rostered pay-up option. I assume LeBron plays now. So for sure, play. But it doesn't even have to be as a placeholder. You can just play Giannis at this point. And then if LeBron's out, pivot to some AD. It's hard to find that much upside in Russell Westbrook. He's massively sucked, not just from a real life, but also a fantasy standpoint this year. But yeah, Giannis, and I know Matt is going to agree, because he already said he liked Giannis as one of his most rostered players earlier.
Yeah, I think it's particularly on FanDuel where he's sub 12K, just jamming Giannis. But even on DraftKings, I'm using Giannis as a placeholder for Giannis.
Yeah, totally reasonable. Giannis works by himself. You don't need to roster him for the purpose of pivoting to somebody else. Another super chat from Ade Balogun. He's asking, are you guys setting any rules for OKC? Not when they're this cheap and there's so many guys out and it's a 5-game slate. If this was like 10 games, then I think there'd probably be other value plays. Here's the issue, though. There's such a lack of value on this slate outside of the OKC guys. And if you're not playing them, who are you rostering today? So I have lineups with 4 OKC players on DK. I don't really find that to be an issue over on FanDuel. I have a ton of lineups with 3 of them. How about you? Are there any kind of restrictions you're making in terms of Oklahoma City Thunder players?
The only rule I'm going with is if I have more than 3 Thunder in the same lineup, I want to run it back with someone for the Kings. That might be like a non-traditional type of rule for NBA. We kind of think about game stacking more with like NFL stuff, but I think if you're really going to take the value with the Thunder, or you're going to play, Giddy with a couple of value plays, we're going to need this game to be a high scoring competitive game. So I like the idea of using some Sacramento there. And by the way, Sacramento could end up being a team that we want to get exposure to anyway, if we get De'Aaron Fox out of the lineup again.
Yeah. And he has to play eventually, right? He's not going to be a question. Is he going to be, he has been a questionable game time decision for about a month now with that ankle injury. And I just have to assume he's close to playing. I have him in my projections right now, and I just gave him slightly reduced minutes. That's what I think is the most likely scenario. But surely De'Aaron Fox has to come back. So I'm just going to ask you, in or out for De'Aaron Fox today?
I'm going to say out. Why not? I want him to be out, so that's a pick with my own.
All right, that's a good enough reason, because that's what you want. I mean, it's hard to predict, right? Because he's missed so many games in a row, but he keeps getting listed as questionable. I would think if the injury was really terrible at this point, they would just be ruling him out in advance. The fact they're waiting until later in the day means that he really thinks he's close to playing. So we'll see. I Am God TV says, I sent a super chat yesterday, but my question was never answered. Well, apologies if we missed it. That is mea culpa. Yeah, definitely not LaMarca's fault. He wasn't here. If Eric's not in the chat, he's not here. We just blame him, and he can't fight for himself. So that seems like a fair way to do this. So we sent a super chat yesterday, but his question never got answered. So this is a 2-question chat. Who are your favorite 2 picks over at Prize Picks? All right. Well, first of all, one thing you guys should be doing to find value at Prize Picks is if you're signing up for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo. You get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. Now, as for the top picks, which is also something Matt and I are going to be sticking around 30 minutes after the slate locks, we'll be talking about some Prize Picks. But let's try to find right now a couple of picks for our guy. Let's see for I Am God TV. I was trying to figure. I thought he left us an actual name. It's like, all right, let's give God a couple of Prize Picks picks here. So one thing that's a really useful resource to use, as we've talked about before, or talked about a lot, check out OddsShopper over on Awesemo.com. It's free to use, and it has just a list of all of our top projected prop plays in terms of expected ROI, projected odds of winning. For Prize Picks purposes, you don't really have to worry too much about the ROI. Just look at the odds with the best chance of winning, and then compare it to some of the numbers at Prize Picks. And that will be a good way to find some of the best values. And you see right now, Mike already has it pulled up. All right, Prize Picks. So here's a couple just at first glance that really stand out to me. Our guy, Kyle Lowry. Over under 3.5 rebounds. Give me the over. I feel pretty good about over 3.5 rebounds for Kyle Lowry. Another one, I will say.
I've got I don't want to call it a layup. I've got a real strong one here.
Go for it.
Gordon Hayward over 25 fantasy points.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that too. Gordon Hayward, and we'll talk about forwards in a second. Really strong play for me on FanDuel today. Not exactly sure what his minutes are going to look like, but it's such a cheap price. I mean, $5,800 for Gordon Hayward. Hard to find him cheaper than that. So I think those are 2 plays that we could both get behind. Would you also agree Kyle Lowry over 3.5 rebounds?
Yes. Love the round mound of rebound, Kyle Lowry.
There we go. The man with the fattest booty in the game. And I Am God. Thank you, God, for a super chat. And hope you have some success at Prize Picks today. Moving on with the guard position, is there anybody we didn't talk about that's an important play for you as far as guards go today?
Yeah, I mean, the Kings are again, they're going to be really important, I think, to monitor. If we get another Davion Mitchell, start in place of Fox, I have no problem paying $5,300 for him. I mean, he has given us now 5 straight games with at least 29.75 DraftKings points. So I still think that is just too cheap of a price tag. I think if you want to look for another spend up option, I have no problem going with LaMelo at 9,300 against the Heat. He's another guy that stands out as a better play today on FanDuel, but 9,300, sure, I'm cool with that. And then the Blazers guards, right? What are we going to, we're still waiting to see who from that trade that they made is going to be available, if anyone. I'm kind of leaning towards it being a no. I think that McCollum, again, fine. 8,200 is not a great price tag for him, but I'll pay it if the team is that shorthanded. And then Anthony Simons, you kind of mentioned him earlier as being a core play for you tonight. I really like him as well.
And now a couple more. And by the way, just to round out the guard position before I answer these other super chats, I find it really hard to get away from CJ McCollum and Anthony Simons. Just everybody is out right now for the Portland Trailblazers after that trade. And if McCollum doesn't get moved sometime soon, I just assume him and Simons are going to have massive usage down the stretch second half of the season. I don't think Dame's returning. So to me, I want to get to Simons and McCollum until these guys get really priced up, or we start to see some sort of changing in the roles or something happens at the trade deadline, because right now those guys are just going to have to carry a massive workload. Question from Brandon Wagner. Kemba on DK, worth a few flyers? Kemba's been starting for a while now, and it has not gone well, and the minutes aren't there. The last two starts for Kemba Walker, 17 minutes in both of them, 10% usage rate and 8% usage rate. He scored exactly 6.75 DK fantasy points in both of them. Starts before then, a 26 fantasy point game, 7, 12, 11. He just has not been producing at a very high level right now, and the minutes haven't been there. He's played under 20 minutes in 4 of the last 5 games since coming back from injury. So Kemba's going to be a no-go for me. This isn't the usual Tom Thibodeau rotation. Randall plays big minutes. Barrett plays big minutes. Nobody else does.
Yeah, I mean, it would help. He might play big minutes if he was still good, but
yeah, that's true.
So I'm cool with leaving Kemba by the wayside.
Yeah, it's just not enough minutes, and he's sucked when he's been on the court. Brock Linklater, he's left us a super chat. Holiday or Halliburton, last man in on FanDuel. So I hate to give you a what-if scenario, but if De'Aaron Fox plays, the answer is Drew Holiday to me. If De'Aaron Fox is out, the answer is Tyrese Halliburton. You seem to like Halliburton a little bit before, and kind of potentially just, regardless of whether Fox is in or out. But for you, Holiday or Halliburton?
I think you hit it on the head. Both teams are in good spots. I think Drew Holiday, this is a very favorable price tag for him. I mean, again, when Chris Middleton was out, he was up over 9K. So we can get him now at 7,500. Fine with that. Halliburton, though, if Fox is out, I mean, we've seen the upside. It's legit, right? He's got the potential to play close to 40 minutes, and he can get us, well into the 50s when he hits his ceiling. So I would take his upside if Fox is out, but I would probably side with Holiday if we knew that Fox was going to play.
All right. And then just one thing I want to circle back and ask you before we wrap up the guards. Do you have any takes on either CJ McCollum or Anthony Simons? I just think both of them look pretty strong today.
Yeah, I'm playing both. I like the price tag on Simons, obviously a lot more. I mean, McCollum at 8,200, he has been, that's pretty pricey for him, right? Like his production has not been there, but his price keeps going up. But the minutes, the usage, it all looks really good tonight. As long as that game stays competitive, I feel pretty good that he and Simons are going to return value.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, given the amount of exposure I'm getting to Giannis right now, if that game doesn't stay competitive, I mean, I'm screwed anyway. You know, if this is a game where the Bucks just go out and roll the Trailblazers and they win by like 40 points and Giannis only plays 25 minutes, my lineups are going to suck anyway. So I kind of think if you're playing a lot of Giannis, which I am at this point, you probably need some of those Portland guys, maybe one or two of them just as a bring back. Does that line of thinking make sense to you?
I'm a fan of the correlation plays, and I think that one makes a lot of sense. I have a couple of, I don't even want to say full game stacks, but if I'm playing more than just Giannis for Milwaukee, then it becomes mandatory in my eyes, right? Like if you are going with Giannis and Holiday or Giannis and Middleton or Bobby Portis, somebody like that, then I think you definitely need somebody on the Portland side. And you have a lot of good choices at kind of all the different price ranges. So I think you're not necessarily like forcing in a bad play just to try and correlate. I think there are good stud plays, good mid-range, good value for Portland. So it's not that hard to make that happen.
Yeah, and somebody in chat saying that Portland has 2 more guards available to play than they did last game. I'm not exactly sure who it is that he's talking about, but I mean, we don't know. As of now, we don't know if Bledsoe or Winslow are going to be out there. But then even some of these low-end guys for Portland, these are not high-usage players. You know, it's not like all of a sudden we're going to see Ben McLemore, Tony Snell, or Dennis Smith Jr. take a whole bunch of shots. I largely expect CJ McCollum, Yusuf Nurkic, and Anthony Simons to take up almost all of the usage for Portland today.
Yep.
Anything else at guard that you think we missed on? If not, we'll move to forward.
Let's roll the forward.
All right. So I don't think we really need to talk about Giannis much more. We've already talked about him. We've already talked about the Kenrich Williams situation. Who are the forwards that we have not yet mentioned that are going to be important to you at small forward, power forward today?
I think the Hornets are an interesting team here, right? Like they've kind of have had a bunch of guys provide value at times this year. And now they're all healthy and they're all kind of underpriced. So I don't know how exactly you want to attack it, but you've got Gordon Hayward at 5,900. That seems too cheap for him. Kelly Oubre at 5,200. I think that's a really good price tag for Oubre. The guy just chucks when he's on the floor. He got to 38.75 in his last game, and he was 4 for 13 from 3. So, on a good shooting night, he's got upside to get, into the 50s, which he did against the Pacers just last week. So I think that they're kind of the most interesting team to me here. I'm not sure exactly how you want to break down the ownership between those guys and Miles Bridges, but it wouldn't shock me if one of these Hornets forwards ended up in the winning lineup.
Yeah, and I also think we have to look at the salary, particularly for Gordon Hayward over on FanDuel, and just the way that the positionality and the pricing works. I mean, 58, it's such a cheap price for Gordon Hayward over on DK, just because of how much flexibility there is with positions. I don't find him as much of a need play at 5,900, but I do on DK. I do on FanDuel where he's 5,800, just the way the position's set up. I think he's a really strong small forward option. And I know earlier it was Bill W. had asked who you guys playing at DK small forward in lineups that don't have Kenrich Williams. We're on FanDuel. Certainly one of those answers is Gordon Hayward. If I'm paying up at the position, I really like getting to Jimmy Butler. I understand Giannis also has small forward eligibility over on FanDuel. On DK, Giannis is power forward center. But looking at Jimmy Butler today, matchup against the Charlotte Hornets, I always want to take advantage of players going up against Charlotte. They play at a really fast pace. They don't play good defense. The Heat have the second highest team total on the slate behind only the Milwaukee Bucks. Is Jimmy Butler somebody you're paying up for?
Yes. I was hoping, though, first that you could antagonize him a little bit before this game again, like you did last week when he went out and dropped the 82 burger.
By the way, I got the best of both worlds in that circumstance, because remember, it was last Saturday. I said that even though I was making fun of Jimmy Butler, I didn't think he could play through these little knick-knack injuries, these little, garbage things are popping up. But I said, but with that said, I really like Jimmy Butler as a play that day. And I got the best of both worlds because he went out at a massive fantasy night and hurt his toe and wasn't able to play the next game. So I felt like everything broke in my favor.
It's all coming up Millhouse.
Oh, yeah, all coming up Millhouse.
Very much into Jimmy Butler. But I think there are a couple of intriguing let me try that again. Intriguing forward options, right? I've been fading Julius Randle all year. He's now down to 8,700 on DraftKings, and that seems like a price tag that we can take advantage of, especially against the Lakers, who rank third in pace, who are subpar defensively. Like, I think this could be a good buy low spot on Julius Randle. And as much as it pains me, I think I'm going to be playing Kyle Kuzma at 7,700. Right. It's a tough matchup against Phoenix. He is not one of these guys that has a great matchup today, but I have not played Kuzma for like most of the year, and it has burnt me for most of the year. And with no Bradley Beal at the moment, he is the guy that is really doing the heavy lifting for this team. 46.75, 51.75, 52 DraftKings points in his last 3 games. If you're a little bit afraid of the matchup, I get that. That's fine with me. But I think that the upside is that of a player who should be priced closer to like 9,000 at this point.
Yeah. So I think one thing that's important to being successful in DFS is just admitting you're wrong sometimes and not just digging your heels in the dirt and being like, no, Kyle Kuzma is terrible. And you just assume he's always terrible. I've totally changed how I view Kyle Kuzma now. I buy into it. Kyle Kuzma, particularly with Bradley Beal off the court, I'm still not going to be somebody who plays Kyle Kuzma when he's like 8,200 and Bradley Beal is active. But when you can get him at $7,700 on DK without Brad Beal, yeah, I like getting to Kyle Kuzma. He scored over 50 fantasy points. So last 3 games, 52, 52, 47 fantasy points. So averaging right around 50 in these last 3 games without Beal. I love getting to him once again. Well, I wouldn't say once again, but I'm into playing Kyle Kuzma now. I feel less strong about it when he's $8,300 over on FanDuel. It's not an unplayable price point, but at 7,700, I'm getting to a decent amount of him on DK. FanDuel, it's just, whatever to me at 83.
Yeah, FanDuel, he's less appealing to me. The forward spot is just because you've got more of those power forward center dual guys. Like, would I rather play Kuzma or Bam, right? Who's very similarly priced at power forward. I would probably lean towards Bam in that regard. But yes, at 7,700 on DraftKings, I think that's too cheap.
All right, another super chat here from Jeff Williams. Top 4 cash plays on DK, but the caveat being we're not allowed to include the Oklahoma City Thunder players. So top 4 cash plays without including the OKC players. All right, so, well, first of all, you want to play these OKC guys in cash. For like you have to. They project so well points per dollar, and they're going to be so popular. I mean, Baisley, Jerome, Kenrich Williams, Trey Mann, Diakite. I would honestly recommend playing all 5 of them in cash games. They're all going to be probably north of 50% owned in DK cash games. So play all 5 of them. But other guys to consider in cash games that aren't them. Let's see. The 4 top for me would probably be Ellaby if you need a different value play. Giannis, Simons, and Nurkic, I guess. Who'd be the 4 for you? If you're playing 4 guys in cash that are not Oklahoma City Thunder players, who are you picking?
Definitely Ellaby and definitely Giannis. I might put, as crazy as this sounds, because he just doesn't profile as a cash guy on most nights, but I really think Kelly Oubre at 5,200 is criminally underpriced. So I'm putting him in that tier. And I also, sticking with the Hornets, I kind of like Mason Plumlee at 5,100. I just think that both of those guys are way too cheap for the amount of minutes and the per minute production that they have been providing recently. So not the most conventional picks, not the guys that I would have assumed I was going to be on, but they're kind of grading out in my projections here as like top per minute plays that aren't on OKC.
Yeah, and once again, play the OKC guys in cash games. Don't be. There's no reason to try to differentiate in cash. You know, whether you come in first place or 20th place in a 50-man cash contest, it's the same result. So try to go as low variance as possible. Play the OKC guys in cash games today. Getting back to the forward position now. Who are the other guys at forward that we've not yet talked about that are important to you? Actually, we should talk about Darius Baisley because we talked about all the OKC guys. We haven't mentioned Baisley yet, who actually might be my favorite of all the OKC guys because he's going to start, most likely he's going to play big minutes. He's played 36 minutes now in back-to-back games. Baisley, considering his price on FanDuel and DK and the position he plays, I really like getting to Baisley. Could you attempt to talk me off him at all, or are you on the same page?
No, I'm with you 100%. He's kind of the one guy that checks all the boxes for the Thunder, right? He's going to see the minutes, and he is good on a per minute basis. And he also has been one of the primary beneficiaries with SGA and with Lou Dort off the floor this season. So he sees a usage bump of 3.4%. That's the highest mark on the team. Brings his per minute production to 0.93 DraftKings points per minute in that situation. So again, this is a guy who can play 35 plus minutes tonight who can give us just under a fantasy point per minute, and who is only 4,100, I think he is a really strong option.
And one other thing while we're on the forward position, are you playing LeBron at all today? I am not. And just looking at some of the ownership projections right now, let me give this a little command R, give it a refresher. Let's see if anything's changed. LeBron's ownership. He is 1% owned right now on DK. On FanDuel, LeBron is 4% owned. Does that intrigue you at all? We don't know if he's playing or not, but that is really low ownership for a 5-game slate.
I doubt it checks in that low once it's confirmed that he's active. I think that if he's going to play, LeBron will get closer to like, he'll still be contrarian, but maybe somewhere in like the 10% range. So I don't think it's a good spot for him against the Knicks, who are, a slow team, either the slowest or second slowest in the league. There's a possible minutes restriction for him. Not to mention the last time we really saw LeBron when he was out there dominating was during a stretch when the team did not have Anthony Davis. So I would not expect LeBron to come right back in and be the guy who's playing, 36 plus minutes and averaging 1.6 DraftKings points per minute. He's probably going to play fewer minutes, and the per minute productivity will decrease with Davis now back in the fold. So I get the temptation, anytime you can grab a player of LeBron's caliber at low ownership on a slate without a lot of studs, it's going to be worth discussing, but I can't get there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to play like 5% of LeBron, which is a very low number. But if you're playing 5% of LeBron on DK, at least at our current ownership projections, you're 5x the field on LeBron. So to me, I look at, and by the way, to your point too, because I pulled this number up, when you have Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook both playing alongside LeBron's only a 1.15 fantasy points per minute guy. So that's definitely a little concerning. It's not a super high number, but it's LeBron and there's no ownership there. I think he's worth getting at least some exposure to in large field tournaments. Cash games, that would be a no-go. But for this situation, considering it's a small slate and we've got some of these OKC guys to play, I like it a little bit as differentiation. Jets World has asked us a question in our premium Discord channel. Butler or LaMelo for last man in a DK cash lineup? That is Butler for me.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just to reiterate the talking about from before, really strong matchup against the Charlotte Hornets. They play at a fast pace. They don't play good defense. The only kind of reservation here would be that Kyle Lowry is back in the mix, but it should still be fine. Jimmy Butler, I think, is a really high floor and a really high ceiling in this spot. Any other forwards we've not yet talked about that are popping up in your lineups meaningfully?
I think that's a pretty good rundown. The only thing I will add is maybe a little, like I have some shares of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at 3,700. Not somebody that I'm super excited about playing, but cheap 30 plus minute upside. Maybe he can knock down some 3-pointers.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, because I guess some people miss the news or talking about LeBron. We don't know if LeBron is playing. He's questionable and he's going to be a game time decision. So he's going to go out, he's going to warm up, see how the knee feels. And then they're going to determine a couple of things. Number one, is LeBron in or out? And then number two, how many minutes could LeBron handle? So as of right now, we don't know. But my assumption is because he went from being doubtful to being upgraded to questionable, generally more of an indication he's more likely to play than not play. So if you were to ask me a percentage chance, I'd say like 75% chance LeBron plays. So I'm just gonna put a guess on it. Give me a number. How confident are you in LeBron sitting or starting?
Yeah, I think 75% is fair. Again, my concerns are not that he's going to be in the lineup. It's more that he is just not going to be asked to go vintage LeBron in this spot.
A couple more questions, or a few more questions now on our Discord channel. First from Oz. Simons or Rozier on FanDuel? I prefer Anthony Simons today. Simons or Rozier for you, Matt?
I do like Rozier. I think he's too cheap, particularly on FanDuel, but I have to give a slight edge to Simons.
Yeah, and oh boy, this is going to be a good one from the process. Feelings on Snell at the minimum. Don't play him. It's just there's just not enough upside in Tony Snell, who has, of course, the legendary game where he went out and played a bunch of minutes, did nothing. But what was that?
Little commotion.
What was it? Was that drums?
It's, my niece is over and she dropped the pot in the kitchen.
Oh, okay. I was confused for a second. I didn't know if it was like a sound effect or whatever. So I get it. Tony Snell last game had like the game of his life. Plays 36 minutes, scores 33 fantasy points. You look through the rest of Tony Snell's games this year, he has not scored more than 17 fantasy points in any of them. And he started a handful of games too. So even with that last game for Tony Snell, where he had that big game as a starter, he has now made 9 starts this year. Give me a guess how many fantasy points you think he's averaging as 9 starts. Keeping in mind that he had 33 last game as a starter.
Okay, 33 in his last game as a starter. Did you say how many minutes he's averaging?
Let's see. I don't want to give you that info. I'm just going to tell you he's made 9 starts this year. He scored 33 fantasy points in the last one.
I'm going to say he's averaging about 15.
13.3 with a 33-point game in there. Don't play Tony Snell. Don't do it. All right. Another question. This one is from Double X Dumbledore. Do you see any great DK cash plays from the first 2 games worth fading in hopes of getting more news in the next in the later set of games? Let's see. So the first 2 games, that is Miami, Charlotte, and Phoenix, Washington. Jimmy Butler. I think Jimmy Butler's a good cash game play. There's nobody else I'd look at and say I need a roster anybody else from that game in cash. How about you? Anybody outside of Jimmy Butler that you'd like as a cash play from the first 2 games?
Yeah, I'm definitely high on Charlotte. Despite this being a tough matchup. I mean, that game just quietly has a 227.5 point total, which is the second highest mark on the slate. So it's a game that I think is fair to have some exposure to, but I also think if you wanted to give yourself more outs for news to break, I'm okay with that too. I wouldn't say any of the Hornets for me are like must plays, but I do think that the Hornets are an attractive team along with Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, to me. And the other thing too, I think it's a very good point that there could be some news that breaks later. So you want to give yourself some flexibility, particularly for cash games where they're looking for the best points per dollar plays. The reality is the best overall plays on the slate, it's OKC, it's Giannis, it's the later players. It's not as much in the early games anyway. So I don't really see much of a need to have to get some at that point. But let's talk about the center position now, where we've got Giannis, we've already talked about. We already talked about Diakite. We both like him. Who are some of the other centers that are important pieces of your lineups?
I'm going to stand for Mason Plumlee again, just in case we have some late arrivers. All Mason Plumlee has done recently is crush. He's gotten now at least 29.75 in 4 straight games. He played nearly 32 minutes in their last game. The Heat are a team that you need some size against with Bam Adebayo and with your 7 potentially back tonight. So Plumlee has always kind of been a sneaky good per minute producer. He's a guy that can give you, upwards of 1.1, occasionally even 1.2 type of fantasy point per minute production. I really like him at 5,100.
Yeah, I'm not really getting to, let's see, what do I have Plumlee projected for? So Plumlee today. And by the way, one of the reasons I'm not getting to Plumlee as much is just because I'm pretty concentrated at center. There's guys I really like. So I don't think I have a bad projection on Plumlee, although I do think his minutes get hurt a little bit with Gordon Hayward being back and presumably not being harshly restricted. So last couple of games, we got 30 and 32 minutes out of Plumlee. I think there's a pretty good chance that dips a little bit below 30 in this spot. I haven't projected fairly well on a points per dollar basis. There's just guys that have center eligibility like Giannis and Diakite and Nurkic. We just got a super chat about him from Orion who said FanDuel GPP can't get away from Nurkic, best other centers. So we talk about Nurkic over on FanDuel where he's priced at 7,700. That's a really appealing price point considering all the guys who are out there. So I really do love Nurkic, but FanDuel specific, who are some of your other favorite center options?
Well, I always typically lean towards Bobby Portis as a power forward, but I have to mention Bobby Portis on every slate. I'm contractually obliged. He hasn't been great recently, No denying that fact, but he continues to play low 30s minutes, and he's averaged 1.07 FanDuel points per minute this season. I think this is a potential buy low, bounce back in a big way type spot for one Robert Portis.
Yeah, I like him as well. His price has gone down on both FanDuel and DK. Also on FanDuel, he's multi-position, FanDuel and DK. Or FanDuel power forward center. DK, it's just center. However, we also have the benefit of the utility spot. I'm with you. I like Bobby Portis. I'm overweights the field on him. He's one of my favorite GPP options. I get that a couple of his recent games haven't been great against the Knicks. He only scored 16 fantasy points against the Nuggets, 17. Keep in mind, both those games were blowouts, and he played very reduced minutes. Last game, he played 35 minutes, which I think is a pretty good indicator of about where he'll play if this game stays competitive. Now, will this game stay competitive? Potentially not, but I have so much exposure to other players in this game that I kind of need it to stay competitive anyway, so I'm not concerning myself with that too much. I'm with you. I like Bobby Portis. Another super chat here from Bill W. He needs $600 to get from Williams to Baisley. Who does he fade? ABC, so that's Giannis, Kuzma, or McCollum. Of those guys, I have the least exposure to McCollum right now. How about you? Giannis, Kuzma, McCollum. Who's your least favorite of that trio?
Probably Kuzma. I guess it depends on what site we're talking about. DK. Okay, then CJ at 8,200. Let's give him a potential pivot, right? He said he needs $600.
Yes.
Yeah, you can go from CJ to Drew Holiday. That gets you 700. I don't hate that. You could also go with Josh Giddey, even if you think Giddey's a little overpriced. He's 600 less than CJ McCollum. So I think you have more options going in that route than dropping down from Kuzma.
Yeah, for me, it's McCollum. I mean, the one guy I would definitely not want to get away from that guy is from that trio is Giannis. I do have McCollum and Kuzma fairly close, but I would dump McCollum personally if it has to be one of them. All right, I believe we're caught up on super chats now. Just a couple minutes to go into lock. But guys, do us a favor. Number one, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, but stick around also. After the slate locks, we got Matt and I, we're going to be sweating the games. Actually, I'm going to be watching UFC, but I'm also going to be paying attention to the NBA games over here. So we'll be reacting to that, and then we'll also be talking about some of our favorite prize picks plays of the day. I want to throw out one GPP play that I do like for this slate that nobody's really on. DeAndre Ayton. So we have not really seen big minutes from Ayton yet since he returned from injury. He missed about 2 weeks since coming back. He played 28 minutes against the Nets in his first game back. Reasonable to think after timeout he'd be restricted. Next game he comes back, he only plays 24 minutes in a game against Atlanta where, the Suns were down a bunch. They needed to get some shooting on the court, and that kind of pinched Ayton's minutes. I don't know what his playing time is going to look like today, but if we do get a full allotment of minutes for Ayton, I think he could really, really crush on this slate at low ownership. Is he somebody you're getting to at all as a tournament play? If not, is there anybody else who we haven't talked about at center that you like?
I don't have any of him at the moment. You do make a good case. I just don't know if they're necessarily going to ramp him all the way back up. I mean, even when he was fully healthy, he was really not a guy that was playing all that much more than 30 minutes a night. I like Bam at 8,700. He's more of a FanDuel play for me. But again, we're looking, I'm overweight on this Miami Charlotte game. Maybe that ends up biting me, but I think that game has the potential to be a very high scoring fantasy game. And Bam has been really good recently. A lot of those games have come with the team being shorthanded, either without Butler or Lowry or both. But I still think 8,700 for him is too cheap in a matchup versus the Hornets.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds to go into lock here. Matt, is there any loose ends here you want to tie up? Anything that we've not yet mentioned, or anybody that you think we missed talking about that we should bring up here?
No, I think we did a good job, Greg. I'm giving us a pat on the back
All
for
right.
the show.
All right, so here's what I'm going to tell the people as we head into lock and we look ahead to the later slated games. This is why you guys should be sticking around, not just for us talking about prize picks, but also Players that are still on the injury report, they're going to impact this slate. LeBron James, he's questionable after missing the last few games. De'Aaron Fox, he's questionable just perpetually. He's always questionable. We're unsure if he's going to play or not today. Marvin Bagley, also questionable. The Portland guys, we don't know if they're in or out today. Eric Bledsoe and Justice Winslow coming over from the trade. We didn't really talk too much about that situation. So just the last question. Do you think those guys will play today or no?
My guess is no.
Yeah, that is my guess as well. But they haven't officially been ruled out, so we shall see. That brings us to lock. Guys, thank you very much for sticking around and watching. And a super chat right at the last second. So we'll try to get this in really quick because this could be, somewhat time sensitive. But from Sam Lee, FanDuel, Giddey or Sid Simmons, I assume it means Simons. Wait, so Giddey or Simons, and then Mitch, Rob, or Plumlee. That is Giddey and Plumlee for me.
Yes. Agreed.
Okay.
I think if you wanted to fade, you wanted to go Simons over Giddey for ownership purposes, I'd be okay with that. But I think Giddey is the stronger play in a vacuum.
All right, let me refresh and see what the ownership gap was between the two, or at least projected. We're not going to know this immediately, but Giddey projected for 38% ownership on FanDuel. Simons is projected for 24%. So both are going to be popular, but there's definitely a gap there. And I'm also overweight to Simon. So no issue with that whatsoever. And it looks like we are all caught up now on the chat. So now time to talk some prize picks. Guys, if you've not signed up for prize picks, do yourself a favor. Sign up for the first time using the promo code Awesemo. Get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit, and you'll also get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. All the tools that you need to make money playing DFS, you'll find behind our paywall. Projections, ownership projections, other tools like the Boom Bust tool, invaluable tools to help building DFS lineups. And we also have similar tools for basically every single DFS sport out there. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. All right, Matt, pull up Odd Shopper. And let's start looking through some of these props. It's the same spiel we went through last week, but hopefully we're a little quicker on the uptick, trying to find some of these. And actually, let's start really quick by looking at the early games. Usually I try to just focus on the later ones, but here's the issue. It's only a 5-game slate. 2 of the games are about to lock. So in the interest of trying to find some plays to give out, we've got 8 minutes until these early games lock on prize picks. Is there anything that stands out to you from the Miami-Charlotte game or the Washington-Phoenix game?
I love Gordon Hayward over 25 fantasy points. I will also take Mason Plumlee over 25 fantasy points. Again, I'm bullish on the Hornets tonight. I think that they can, normally I don't try to target the Heat, but the Vegas data and this being a short slate, I think that game should be one of the better ones tonight.
I've got one for you here. Jimmy Butler. Over under is 20.5 points. That's a low number for this matchup. Give me over 20.5 points for Jimmy Butler. I have him around 23 tonight. So I like taking that over 20.5. Something else too, if you're going to take multiple players from the Charlotte-Miami game, it kind of makes sense to correlate them together. And if you're just it makes sense to have some overs in there and you go, all right, let's root for a really fast-paced game. Then you got a better chance of there just being, extra possessions and all these prop setting. When you look at how Prize Picks works and how if you're making these cards with, 3 or more player props, you'd like those numbers to correlate at least in some sense for some of them. So Jimmy Butler, I also think that makes sense from that game. And Kyle Lowry, if I remember before, we had Kyle Lowry over 3.5 rebounds is something we liked. So over 3.5 rebounds for Kyle Lowry, over 20.5 points for Jimmy Buckets. Hit me up with that. All right. What else, Matt? What stands out to you from Phoenix, Miami, Charlotte, Washington?
How about Kyle Kuzma over 30.5 points plus rebounds plus assists? Another guy, the matchup is not great, but he has cruised past 30.5 recently. He's been getting it done with just his points and his rebounds. So just, adding in his roughly 2 or 3 assists per game is just gravy on top. I think that's a pretty good number for him.
Yeah. Let's see. So the number is 30.5. Let's see. What would Yeah, I think the number should probably be like 33.5, just looking at the information I have. Considering, the on-off court numbers for Kyle Kuzma this year with Bradley Beal off the court, but then also having to factor in that difficult matchup against the Suns. I think that's a few points plus rebounds, assists short of where I would have it. So I get behind that one as well. We did get a question from Peter Gazer in our YouTube chat. He's asking Kyle Lowry over or under 6.5 assists. That's another one that I like the over for. I have Kyle Lowry over 6.5 assists. I don't know that I'd be super confident playing that on Prize Picks, though, just because I think there's a really wide range of outcomes with Kyle Kuzma's minutes. And I look at taking props kind of more similarly to how I would look at playing a cash game versus compared to how I'd play a tournament in DFS. So like 5,800 for Kyle Lowry on FanDuel, really excellent price and a lot of upside there. But at the same time, I'm not exactly sure what to make of his minutes. So even though I have 6.5 projected as an over, I don't feel super confident in it. Do you feel differently? Kyle Lowry over under 6.5 assists?
I think that's a very fair way to think about it. If you look at on the surface, right, this number is too low. Lowry has at least 7 assists in 25 of 40 games this season. So I agree that I would take the over, but I think you also make a sound argument regarding the minutes, right? Like maybe this game gets out of hand, right? Or maybe they just take it easier on him than we're expecting, and he only plays 28 minutes or something like that. So I think that's fair. I don't think we necessarily need to hammer that one in there.
And by the way, the game's about to lock in a few minutes, but I think we've got a good shout out here from Dope Heathen, who's saying, get that Chris Paul prop, and Ryan Nelson 02 posting Chris Paul is over under 12 assists. I like the under there. 13 assists seems like a really high bar for Chris Paul to have to get to on the average. And, also maybe a little bit of a chance that the Suns win this game by blowout, another route for it to potentially win. What do you make of 12 assists for Chris Paul? It's a big number.
That's a humongous number. The point God, Chris Paul. I love Chris Paul. Would it shock me if he had 15 assists in this matchup? No, but I mean, every player in the league is going to have a mean assist expectation below 12, right? Like that's just, nobody averages 12 assists a game. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, one thing that is kind of note, DK does have the prop set at 12.5 assists. So if we are kind of odd shopping and looking at some other places, under 12.5 assists would also be pretty favorable. But yeah, for Prize Picks purposes, give me the under 12 assists for Kyle Kuzma. One other thing that I think is worth shouting out.
Chris Paul.
Oh yeah, Chris Paul. Sorry. Yeah, Kuzma, I'd be crushing.
We would hammer that one.
Yeah. I would.
That would be a mortgage play.
Oh yeah, my house. It would be. We're putting the whole thing up there. I have to explain that to the family. One other one, really quick. Spencer Dinwiddie over under 13.5 points. He had that one poor game, was it 2 games ago without Bradley Beal? In general, though, Dinwiddie's been a pretty good scorer this year in games without Bradley Beal. I haven't projected well over 13.5 points. I didn't end up playing a bunch of Dinwiddie in DFS, but I think that over for the points is something to look at. It's a little bit too weighted for some recent performances, but keep in mind, a lot of those Bradley Beal was involved. And the last 2 games ago, he only scored 7 points. But look at last game. He had a 32% usage rate. He scored 14 points. He also had a triple-double. I like the over for 13.5 points on Spencer Dinwiddie. I know he's drawing Chris Paul defense, but how do you feel about that number?
It's a terrible number. It's not even the recent performances so much. It's the fact that there's been all the rumors about, his teammates essentially don't respect him and don't want him to be there. I think that's, kind of forced this narrative that he's not going to play well, but he had 14 points. Like you said, he shot 4 of 16 in that game, right? If he can hit the over shooting 25% from the field, you have to feel good about him getting to 14 again.
Yeah, and let's talk about, because Chad is saying, we got some box score watchers out there, Matt, and they're saying, well, Chris Paul has gone for at least 12 assists in 4 consecutive games. I hear you. That's true. He has. But over the long haul, he averages 10.5 assists per game this year. And you have to say, on a day-to-day basis, What are you projecting for Chris Paul? And it's not like somebody gets on a hot streak for assists. It just so happens to be he's had some recent games where guys have hit shots. It's not like all of a sudden Chris Paul's like, oh my God, he's so much better at passing the basketball than he was a month ago. He's just had games where, for whatever reason, his assists have gone up. But these are always the situations I'm generally looking to take advantage of. If somebody's numbers are really inflated based on recent outcomes, I don't expect it's going to come back to earth. It's going to normalize at some point. So as soon as those numbers go up, that's when I want to be on the other side. It's the same thing for DFS when we're projecting players,
100%.
right? If somebody's salary goes way up because they just played well, we generally don't want to play them. If somebody's salary has gone way down recently because they haven't been playing well, there's probably value in that spot because over the long haul, NBA is one of the more predictable DFS sports from projections. It doesn't mean it's foolproof. Isaiah Jackson gets hurt 22 seconds in the game sometimes. We're all aware that happens. But over the long course of the season, it's easier to project individual stats for basketball players than it is, say, for football players or baseball players. And for the rest of the season, you have to say, is Chris Paul going to average more or less than 12 assists per game? And it's probably going to be under for me. So I'm taking the under for Chris Paul here.
Yeah. And just to say exactly what you just said in a slightly different way, Chris Paul has 15 games this season with 13 or more assists. He's played 51. So the vast majority of his games, he has had 12 assists or fewer. He's just happened to have at least 13 in 5 of his last 7. So that doesn't mean that his expectation has changed. It just means, like you have said, that he has run a little bit hot in that department. So I agree with everything you said. Just thought I'd put some additional numbers on it.
Yep. We are on the same page there, and it looks like we've got these games now locked. Let's see if these games tipped off yet. I'm going to check, see if we got any stats. It's never too early to tilt games. As we say on these last 30 minutes, there is nothing more important to your DFS lineups than the first 6 minutes of the first quarter, because that's what we're looking at here. So nothing has started yet in terms of the games tipping off, but let's see. What do we have?
Well, first we have to bet on which game is. Oh, never mind. We do have they've both tipped, so we can't bet on which is going to tip first.
Okay, yeah, they did just tip. So let's see. What do we have for some early ownerships? Quick start for Kuzma. Already is a minute into the game. Kyle Kuzma has hit a 3 and grabbed a rebound. So 6 fantasy points in a minute for Kyle Kuzma. How many minutes were we giving him today? 36?
All I know is Kuzma's winning me all the money. As I expected, or as we've kind of expected, there's not a ton of ownership in this game. Jimmy Butler is the highest owned player at 25.5%. There are only a handful of guys that have even cracked double digits. So, like I said, right, to be expected with all of the different Thunder value out there tonight. I think a lot of people just were going to wait and see what happens. But if either of these early games shoot out, it's going to be advantageous to have been overweight to them.
All right, here we go. Early ownership. I pulled up the $4 on DK. Kuzma, the most popular player, 29% owned. Jimmy Butler.
Okay, that's interesting.
Jimmy Butler, 19%. So I'm going to be rooting for Jimmy Butler today. Bam Adebayo, 17%. That's a fairly high number. It's a little surprising to me.
Yep.
LaMelo at 17, Dinwiddie at 13. We've got Chris Paul and Devin Booker, each at 12%. Rozier at 11%. And then nobody else is over 10. Eytan, who I liked as a contrarian play, he is checking in at just 8% ownership. So there we go. That, like we said, not too much.
I was looking at the $15 tournament, and there's some interesting discrepancies there.
Oh, which was the Kuzma?
Yeah, this tournament has Kuzma at around 21.5%, but that puts him behind Jimmy Butler and LaMelo Ball.
Interesting. Yeah, so it looks like Kyle Kuzma a lot more popular in lower stakes than he is in a little bit of the higher stakes. By the way, the Suns struggling out of the gate here. We are 3 minutes into the game. How many assists do you think Chris Paul has?
Well, they only got 2 points, so max 1.
Yeah, and he is 0. So there we go. None. He's cold. He's cooled off. He can't assist anymore. Over on the Wizards side of the game, identical starts for Thomas Bryant and Kyle Kuzma. Each of them have hit a 3 and have a pair of rebounds. Are you aware that Thomas Bryant's like a 40% 3-point shooter?
I had no idea.
Yeah, there was. I was watching a game the other day. I can't remember who the Wizards were playing. Maybe it was the 76ers. And one of the announcers said, like, Thomas Bryant was wide open and shot a 3 and made it. And the announcer's like, oh, that's not his game. We'll give him that all day. And it was a game against Boston. It was the Celtics announcer. It said, yeah, you give Thomas Bryant that shot all day. And then I'm pulling up his stats. I'm like, I don't know. He shot 43% from 3 last year. He shot 41% the year before. I don't know that that's the proper strategy to leave that guy open for threes all of the time. Now, understand that's limited sample sizes because he's been hurt a shit ton lately. So you're looking at just 46 games, 2019, 2020, only 10 games in 2020, 2021. But either way, back-to-back years where he shot over 40% from 3. I think he's a very legit 3-point shooter at the very least. Don't leave him wide open and don't think that's good strategy. Let's get back to...
Can I go on a quick aside here?
It doesn't even have to be quick.
There is a college basketball game right now going on between Penn State and Wisconsin. The score is 28-21 with 14 minutes left to go in the second half. How does anyone prefer college basketball to professional basketball? It blows my mind that there are people out there that's their take.
So there are people who look at that and they just assume that means the defense is better. That's not the case. The players are just worse.
The score was 18-13 at halftime. That's low scoring. That's like a football game score.
It's a 6-year-old elementary school basketball score.
Yeah.
Where the kids can't reach the basket. I used to coach in one of those leagues when I was in high school. When you're younger and they tell you, well, to get into college, you have all these extracurricular activities.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, the shit that people told me to do that was never relevant. Nobody asked me. There was never a point where people were like, oh, how did your 8th grade it was a 6th and 7th grade league. Nobody ever asked me, oh, what happened in that league? How did it go? And even afterwards, how many people have ever asked you what your grades were in college at this point in your life? Nobody cares.
Thankfully, none. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that.
There's never been a point where somebody has asked me like, oh, how did your,
If they did, I would just lie too. What are they going to do? They're going to call up and ask.
Nobody's asked how. Nobody's asked me about accounting 101. Nobody's asked me about that class or any of my grades there. By the way, John Campbell, shouting out Mason Plumlee, 12 fantasy points already. Let's see what's going on there because it looks like
Dog millionaire.
Matty LaMarca with a good call there. Yeah. Oh my God, look at this. We are 3.5 minutes into the game. Mason Plumlee has 2 points, 2 rebounds, and assists, 2 steals and a block. Dude's going nuts.
My man's stuffing the stat sheet.
He's doing everything. What do they even need LaMelo for to run the point? They've got Mason Plumlee. From the Heat side of the game, 2 points and 3 rebounds for Jimmy Butler. Okay, start for him. Kyle Lowry, big dud, 0 fantasy points so far. We panicking?
Yes, panicking.
Yeah, we're panicking. Jimmy,
right? If we were only expecting about 30 minutes from him, he's now played 4 of them and he's done nothing. So yeah.
It's not ideal. It is not ideal. Jimmy Butler right around a fantasy point per minute, but once again, the standout star, Mason Plumlee. Matt LaMarca's GPP du jour play of the slate.
Throw the glasses on me.
Do you know how to do it?
How about this?
Oh, that works too. Look at I'll put on I do it the more technical way. If I'm doing it, I put them on like this. I'm doing it for you, but look at Matt LaMarca. Matt LaMarca telling people to play Mason Plumlee. He comes out and scores 1 billion fantasy points in the first 3 minutes of the game. Deal with it, guys. Deal with it. All right, there we go.
I just have to find those first 3 minutes only DFS contests.
Yeah, that's, by the way, you know what that trophy is for over your shoulder.
We all know.
Oh, it's boy most likely to predict a big fantasy game out of Mason Plumlee trophy. That's what that trophy is. People asking what was my record as a coach. I have no clue. I really don't remember. I think we lost in the semifinals, if I remember correctly. I was coaching games with my friend Andrew Bronstein we wore suits to look like
Oh my God.
we wore
To look like Pat Riley.
Oh yeah, to look like Pat Riley. We wore suits on the sidelines, which we just thought was funny. And then the parents would just get upset and complain about everything. Like I remember this one kid's, because it's 6th and 7th grade basketball. If you remember how they worked, all the kids have to play the same amount of minutes.
Yeah, of course.
So if the game goes to overtime, though, you have free reign to play whoever you want, but it's still like we weren't taking it that seriously. It's, exercise. We're just running around with the kids. We play basketball with them at practice and whatnot. And I don't remember the name of the kid, but basically the game went into overtime. The fat kid at the end of the bench had not been in the game recently. So we're like, overtime, we're going to put him in. One of the moms tried to fight with us and be like, you can't put him in overtime. Like she got really upset about it. She's yelling in front of the kid, like, you can't play him in overtime. The kid must have been traumatized. I doubt he wanted, actually his mom. So after that happened, his mom called us and said that he wanted to quit the team. We had to talk him back into playing. It was a whole thing. But anyway, parents taking 6th grade basketball way too seriously. All right, let's get back to prize picks. We've got a few minutes left here to talk about. Let's hit on the late games, right? We've hit on the early games, which have now locked. We've seen Mason Plumlee is already off to a terrific start from Matt LaMarca's lineups. Who are some players you think we could get into prize pick cards for the later games tonight?
How about a little Anthony Simons? And I'm thinking maybe we go over 3.5 made 3-pointers. It's kind of a big number for threes, but Simons is kind of known for just getting out there and chucking. If you look at his last, let's see, how many games, his last 10 games, he has at least 4 in 7 of them. It just so happens that his last 3 were the ones that he did not do that. So I think the sample size, there's enough here to support Simons getting to 4 3-pointers today.
Yeah, I am right now. By the way, I have him projected right below 4. Something else to consider about his recent games is he just hasn't shot the ball well. It's not that he isn't taking the shots anymore. As a starter this year, he averages 3.7 threes per game. So he does average slightly over that 3.5. Very slight, but still, I think that's worth noting. Something else here that's worth noting is, what do the Portland Trailblazers have to do to win this game against the Milwaukee Bucks? 3-point shooting variance. They're not going to win them in a straight just basketball game where they're going back and forth trading buckets. But if they could try to benefit from some 3-point variance, you take extra shots, maybe some of them go in. That's how you win the game against the Milwaukee Bucks when you're a big underdog.
I was going to suggest locking Giannis in the locker room.
Oh, that too. That too. Yeah. Maybe a little, Nancy Kerrigan action. Maybe you get a little.
No, first of all, I don't even know if that would work on Giannis. You'd have to really hit him.
You think you just regenerate his Achilles?
I mean, the guy basically did that last year in the playoffs, right?
Yeah. It's well, yeah, I think what you do is you throw. See, the issue is that Grayson Allen is on the Bucks. If you had Grayson Allen on the Trailblazers, that's where you sit Grayson Allen on the other team's next player. By the way, let's try to find another prize picks play. While you're doing that, I'm going to update some people on box scores here.
Okay.
Halfway through the first quarter, a little more than halfway through the first quarter. We found some decent looking contrarian center plays. DeAndre Ayton, 6 minutes into the game, 7 points and 4 rebounds. So Ayton, he's looking good as a contrarian center option. Chris Paul, not getting it done right now. Just 1 rebound, 2 assists halfway through the first quarter. Over on the Washington side of the game, Kuzma, after his big first minute, has not done anything. He has 0 fantasy points after that 1 minute. Dinwiddie has 2 points and 2 assists. Let's see, rolling over to the Hornets Heat game. Big start for Jimmy Butler. 6 minutes, he's got 8 points and 3 rebounds, so strong start for him. Kyle Lowry, maybe panicking a little bit. Kyle Lowry has 1 personal foul, 1 assist, no other stats. From the Hornets side of the game, Plumlee's not done anything since his big start, but whatever, 2 points, 2 rebounds, and assists, 2 steals, and a block. Yeah, you still feel good about that big start. Gordon Hayward to the bench early, so maybe his minutes might be a little more restricted than we thought. He just played 5 minutes before subbing out. Lonzo, another player who a lot of people are asking, or LaMelo, my bad. LaMelo, 4 points, a rebound, and an assist. Abram Anderson is saying that he had the under on Bam's rebounds. Yeah, Bam does have 5 rebounds in 6 minutes, so not one to feel great about. All right, 5 minutes left to go here, Matt. What have you found some other players to look at on Prize Picks? What are the props that look good from these later slate of games?
So I'm gonna throw it back to you with a question.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 3 scoring props for the Thunder guys. Josh Giddey, 16 points. Trey Mann, 15 points. And Darius Baisley, 13.5 points. If you were going to take one of those players, and it can be over or under, which one stands out as the best bet to you?
You know, they all seem, if I'm being honest, I wouldn't actually take any of them. They all seem about accurate. But if I had to take one, it would be Baisley for over 13.
Okay. I think that's fair. I'm leaning towards man over. We do have that grading out best in Odd Chopper at the moment, but he only had 9 points in his last game, but he was 4 for 17 from the field. He had 29 the game before. So I feel like a decent bounce back spot here for Trey Mann.
Yeah, I have Trey Mann very slightly projected for the over on that. Not enough to where I'd want to get to it. I think that's a good point, though. First of all, really favorable matchup against the Kings. Another thing also, I'm not going to be too concerned about the tail end of a back-to-back. Trey Mann, young player, and OKC's missing so many guys. They're going to have to run him out there for big minutes. But yeah, I think that all makes sense. If I had to take one side on Trey Mann, it would be the over. But the way you pose the question, the one I feel best about is the over for Baisley.
Giddy up.
Here's one that I like. Evan Fournier under 14.5 points. Even if you look at Evan Fournier's average games, you have to take in mind that he's like 5 really shitty games in a row, then like 1 massive game for Evan Fournier. The way that his box scores work, it's, the clip of the soccer manager, I can't remember who it is, where he was asked about how his team was playing something. He goes, yeah, sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit. That is Evan Fournier, but it also really skews his fantasy point average, his fantasy and point average. So if you look at his games over the last month, he has actually scored less than 10 points more often than he scored over 20. But because when he scores his big games, he'll go out and score like 25 or 30 points. It kind of brings up his scoring average. I have Evan Fournier I think Evan Fournier under 14.5 makes a lot of sense because he's not going to hit. If he hits the over, it's not going to be like 16 or 18 points. He's most likely going for like 10. But if he does hit the over, it's going to be like 30. But anyway, for just a prop play, I like the under on that quite a bit.
So the only thing I will say is I do think that the Knicks are really trying to showcase Evan Fournier, the talent of Evan Fournier. And they're really like hoping that some team like the Lakers makes a panic move because that contract is quite possibly the worst in the league at this point. So I really do think they're trying to see if they can trade him. And they're going to lean on him up until the trade deadline. Now, he's had 18 or more in 3 straight, but he has shot the ball ridiculously well over that time frame. He is 58% from the field, 55% from 3-point range. So I'm not as comfortable taking the under as you are, but I certainly think regression is headed in his way.
Yeah, and also I'm trying to pull up I think this is the video. Obviously, I can't listen to it with audio while I'm in the middle of doing this, but I think this is the video. I just posted it into the YouTube chat. I think this is the one that I'm talking about. It's like an Italian soccer manager, and it's one of my favorite clips ever from after a sporting event. Let's see. We do have a question here. Mark Curry. I think this is not a bad way to close here. Mark Curry saying we need some Strickland Hermanson props. All right, let me pull up Prize Picks. Let me see what we have for the MMA card tonight. Let's see if they
Am I mistaken on Fournier? Oh no, I'm sorry.
In what way?
I was looking at his contract the wrong way. But yeah, it's really bad. It's disgusting. Disgusting contract. Please continue.
So here we have that question that was asked from Mark Curry. Here's the issue. There are no props up for Jack Hermanson. There is for Sean Strickland over under 112.5 significant strikes. I think that's about a fair number. So it's hard for me to say otherwise. Here's something that I do think kind of makes sense, though. Strickland is an over-under of 107.5 fantasy points. That is a massive number. If he wins, I don't know that he's guaranteed to have over 107.5 fantasy points. If he loses, he's certainly not having over 107.5 fantasy points. When you consider that the line for that fight right now is, let's see. So right now we have Strickland as a, pretty significant minus 240 favorite over at DK. So we consider he's going to win more often than not, but it's not like he's going to win every time. And let's say in the times he loses, he's never hitting that prop number. In the time he wins, though, he's probably like 50-50 to hit the over on that fantasy score. So with that in mind, I think if I had to take one prop here, it would be the under 107.5 fantasy points for Sean Strickland. That's going to do it for us today. We got to throw in a little MMA at the end. I'm also watching on the screen here at the same time. Do us a favor if you haven't done so already, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Other than that, have a good weekend.